Chapter 230. On the way back to the hotel, Chen Guang's face was full of displeasure. During the process of locking the car and taking the money, he hid in the car and secretly looked at it. Lu Fei and Uncle Cheng stood up for him and helped him get 1 million yuan in cash, which was locked in the box beside his hand. The Aston Martin V8 Castle S Coupe, which was targeted by Lu Fei, was also locked in the underground garage of the Half Mountain racetrack. Before the dust of the car gambling competition settled, no one could touch it. The guy who locked the car seemed to be a real nouveau riche. From beginning to end, he did not show the slightest displeasure and kept surrounding Lu Fei. It was not that he wanted to hit on Lu Fei, but he wanted to hit on Chen Guang, who was standing behind Lu Fei. It was not only this guy. From getting out of the car, getting the money, locking the car, and returning to the off-road vehicle, there were at least hundreds of people trying to hit on her. If it weren't for the protection of Uncle Cheng, Lu Fei would almost not have been able to leave. Many locals in Hong Kong recognized Uncle Cheng, and those who were not from other places knew that he was a big shot who could not be offended after being pointed out by the locals. Even so, she was exhausted and sweating. "If I knew it would be so troublesome, I should have asked you for a commission." After getting in the car, Lu Fei complained to Chen Guang while trying hard to tidy up her almost torn leather coat. "Little Fei, don't say that. I just saw that you enjoyed the feeling of being surrounded by stars." Uncle Cheng, who was sitting in the front row, made a joke. This was the first time that Chen Guang heard him speak. He almost thought that he was mute. He thought that this uncle's voice was really strange. It was like scraping a knife on the table, and his ears were sore. Seeing Chen Guang's surprised face, Lu Fei explained, "Uncle Cheng fought in a war before, and his throat was scratched by a bullet on the battlefield."
Damn.
"He didn't die even after being shot in the throat. This world is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Fortunately, I have been low-key." Chen Guang's eyelids twitched. He had long felt that this uncle was powerful, and it turned out to be so. Uncle Cheng just smiled and didn't say anything. He waved his hand and signaled for the convoy to set off. Although many people wanted to stop him, no one dared to offend Uncle Cheng. The organizer of the previous competition also came up to Uncle Cheng and chatted with him for a while. In the end, he smiled bitterly and shook his head before leaving. He even promised to escort the GTR for the next few days. It was Uncle Cheng who pretended to understand. "I'll have to trouble you for the next 7 days." This sentence stunned the organizer for a long time. 7 days? Now you say 7 days? If you weren't Tang Chao-cheng, I would have slapped your face. It's not that I want to say this, but the prize money for this car racing competition is too low. He brought a car worth millions to participate in the competition, but he only got 1 million if he won, Chen Guang said as he stroked the lockbox in front of him with a face full of regret. Of course, even though he said so, he was still happy when he thought about the million in cash. Lu Fei looked at him in annoyance. "You've already taken advantage of me, and you're still pretending to be innocent. This is only the first round, and you got 1 million for nothing. What else do you want? After the second round tomorrow, you'll get another 1,500,000. You didn't pay for the car either. There's no such thing as a business without capital in this world." But it's still too little. Chen Guang was still a little indignant. "It doesn't matter to me. Are those people who came to participate in the competition stupid? The input and output are not proportional at all." Lu Fei covered her face in pain. She only felt that it was too embarrassing. "Only you are so practical. It's all for the money. Others are after excitement and fame. Besides, who would want to lose in the first round? Won't the next few rounds accumulate? What if you get first place? Can't you still pick other people's cars? What if you become the king of cars? There are so many conceited people in this world. Just because you're good, you don't allow others to have dreams?" Chen Guang nodded. "That's true. Even a dabbler like Wang Qing dared to use a car worth 10 million to enter. There are quite a lot of fools. This GTR feels much better to drive than his last car." Lu Fei was already speechless. She actually felt that what he said made sense. On the other side, Chen Guang and Lu Fei stayed in the hotel in Tsim Sha Sui and left. They didn't care that the matte GTR had completely exploded outside. The appearance of a speed of 139.54 officially opened the prelude to this year's car racing competition, which was different from the previous 3 years. Although there were some people who ran very close to this level later, they were still a little worse than him. Because of Uncle Chung, many people couldn't find out Chen Guang's identity in person. But when the first round of the competition ended and the crowd gradually dispersed, the hidden undercurrents gradually surged in the dark. Snowflakes of information flew from Xinjiang to all parts of the world through email, WeChat, QQ, MSN, or other channels. Diesel's record had finally been broken. And under the leadership of this person, a total of 13 cars broke Diesel's record in the first round of the Xinjiang car racing competition. Just this piece of news instantly rendered a different halo to the Xinjiang car gambling competition, whose status was gradually declining in the international arena. The matte GTR came from Jie's modification factory. This matter wasn't hidden for long. Soon, someone found Jie overnight and tried to find out the driver's information from Jie. However, Jie didn't know Chen Guang's real name at all. As for his identity, he didn't know anything. But the people who came to inquire about the news had powerful backgrounds, and he could not say anything. After thinking hard, Jie barely made up such a person. It was a young man with an extremely mysterious identity. He came from the mainland and was escorted by the daughter of a big shot in the mainland's Sichuan province. He was also escorted by Xinjiang's local big shot, Uncle Chung. He was very young, handsome, domineering, quiet, and low-key. Other than that, there was nothing else that could be said. As for the identity of the original owner of the GTR, it wasn't difficult to find out. Wang Qing, the son of Wang Guixiong, the boss of the Wujing city's Dingshan gang. Wang Qing was now lying in the hospital, so this driver was definitely not him. Anyone who knew a little about the industry had already vaguely guessed this person's identity. It was indeed impossible to easily find out. Whether it was the daughter of the Liu family, Tang Chaocheng, or Wang Guixiong's son, any of these three people were not people who could be easily offended. A person who could make these three forces either send cars, people, or escort them didn't care about the outside world's reputation at all. This was a mysterious person who only wanted to hide in the dark, but he was overflowing with talent and unparalleled. He was only here to enjoy his own racing journey. Because of Uncle Chung, Jie wasn't put in a difficult position. After bragging about the identity he had made up again and again, he finally ended this busy day. Some people chose to believe what Jie said, some only believed part of it, and some didn't believe it at all. They only thought that the person was a top driver found by Liu Fei or Wang Qing. That was all. But no matter what, since the other party didn't want to reveal his identity, there wouldn't be any results unless he took the initiative to ask. At the same time, in an underground modification factory in Los Angeles, such a conversation was taking place. Diesel, your record in Xinjiang has been broken. Some people say that you're outdated. Really? Interesting. In a small house beside a mountain road in Bangkok, Thailand, a young man so handsome that he didn't look like a man suddenly stood up from his chair, stretched, and dialed a number. Yuan, the CTR I left at your house is about to rust, right?
Help me take it out to dry.
Wu Pan Junyao, want to come to Xinjiang. Deep in the Brazilian rainforest, it was noon and the sun was blazing in the sky. A man sat on a motorcycle. Speed, you're already 33 years old. Don't go, okay? No. 33 years old, just right. When I come back, we'll buy the farm opposite. In a car factory in Detroit. Dad, let me go. You're the Sonic Shaker. The birth of a new car king must be approved by the Shaker family. Although you're old now, I'm your son. All right, Ferrand, do you like that car? The 19-year-old Fronte pointed his finger at the ferocious beast hiding in the corner. A terrifying monster with 1,200 horsepower. London, England. Racing is a sport for gentlemen. Let me, Ferdinand, go and tell the Huaxia people that Xinjiang is still ruled by the British Empire. At least in the racing field. Jenny, I want to go to Xinjiang with my Aston Martin Zagato, beside the Great Rift Valley in Africa. Felix, are you going out to race again? Yes, I have to win back a sum of money. Otherwise, the chief will sell the newly discovered coal mine to the Huaxia people. I'll go to the Huaxia people's territory, win back money from them, and then buy back our coal mine from them. Not only that, more and more people with black skin, white skin, yellow skin, and brown skin set off from all over the world one after another. At this moment, in the eyes of the global underground racing world, Xiangjiang had turned into a black hole, or rather, a sun. One after another, extremely dazzling rays of light from all directions of the earth suddenly connected to the sky above Xiangjiang. The banquet of the global racing world began on this night. At this moment, the true God who was about to ascend to the altar was sleeping soundly on the hotel bed. His saliva wet the pillow without him knowing. Chapter 231. Unlike Qin Guang, who was sleeping soundly, Lu Fei, who was lying in the room next to him in the suite, was tossing and turning on the bed. When the hustle and bustle quieted down for a short while, her mind was turning over and over again, but the moment when Qin Guang showed his magic skill at the Z-curve, at a slower speed than in the giant screen at that time, she kept replaying it in slow motion. She felt that her heart was beating faster than a bird's. In the dead of night, her heartbeat sounded so ear-piercing, as if someone was really playing drums beside her. She couldn't stop trembling, and between her legs, there was a wet. She suddenly decided to drop all the things at hand and come to Hong Kong. After arriving here, she was busy for a whole day. Of course, it was impossible to say that she was not tired. Lu Fei was also very tired, but she just couldn't sleep. She was also secretly proud in her heart. This group of people will not race in the future, but Zhong Bai and the others are not like me. They have no chance to be there in person and witness the racing god show his magic skill. Those who didn't truly understand cars, or those who loved cars, wouldn't be able to understand that the moment he turned the corner, he would be so excited that his hair would stand on end. Moreover, the person who displayed this godly skill was his friend, perhaps even half a master. This feeling is like the hardcore fans of the Brazilian team seeing Fat Luo break through Khan's defense in the World Cup final. It is also like the hardcore Comey staying in front of the TV, watching Kobe Bryant shoot the buzzer-beating three-point shot in the tiebreaker of the NBA Finals. Even if he can't find like-minded people to share his happy and excited feelings, it is enough to close the door and cover himself in a cup to laugh. Of course, Lu Fei also knows what Qin Guang's so-called blind race means today. Those people must be on the way, right? The peerless master who was once unattainable and could only look up to now has to compete with her master on the same stage, and it is very likely that he will be ruthlessly trampled under his feet. This kind of expectation really can't be expressed in thousands of words. In the southeast province thousands of kilometers away, Tang Ying, tired but excited, is carefully pushing a wheelchair, slowly boarding the train to Wujing. Sitting in the wheelchair is a tired middle-aged woman. The expression on the woman's face looked a little ashamed, but more excited and agitated. Behind Tang Ying, Zhong Bai, with dark circles under his eyes, was accompanied by 3 bodyguards dressed in black. Behind the bodyguard were several men and women with complicated expressions. They were the woman's family. A little further away, a pale-faced middle-aged man was looking in this direction with a face full of despair. "Dad, let's wait a little longer. This auntie's kidney isn't the best match for you. We've already gone too far. Let's leave it at that." The middle-aged man's entire body shook. He turned around dejectedly and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only endless loneliness. Chen Guang woke up early and felt refreshed. It had been a busy day yesterday. After getting off the plane, he went racing without any rest. When he returned to the hotel, it was already past 10 o'clock. He was slightly tired. Of course, the happiest thing was that he completely gave up on the rest of the final exams. He didn't have to read anymore and decisively went to bed to sleep soundly. As for the makeup test, what did you say? The wind is too strong for me to hear. There was only one problem that was a little awkward. He was overly excited during the race, which caused a little side effect. It wasn't too serious. It was just that he didn't bring a change of underwear. Hee hee. What was more annoying was that he didn't know if there were people outside trying to find out his identity. Chen Guang couldn't go out easily. He had to spend the next few days in this hotel suite. Oh my god, this suite looked like it would cost a lot of money. There were many kinds of fitness equipment in the corner of the large living room. What was even better was that there were 4 computers in the room. When he came back last night, Chen Guang had already checked it. It was an i7 CPU and a Titan graphics card. The air of a tycoon hit him in the face. It couldn't be more fun to play Dota with it. Walking out of the room, he took out a cup from his bag and grabbed a handful of Longjing tea leaves from the dozen or so types of tea provided by the hotel. He brewed the tea and sat on the rocking chair by the windowsill to bask in the rising sun. Feeling the warm morning sun, he was extremely satisfied. When the tea cooled down a little, she took a sip and waited for the waiter to bring her breakfast. Damn, the life of a rich person is simply too awesome. I can't ask Lu Fei how much money she needs for a day. What if she asks me to return the money? I'll just pretend that I don't know anything. When is this woman going to wake up? What should I say to make her take the initiative to buy new underwear for me? The old man is going to become rich soon. He can only wear branded underwear like Sansho, right? After thinking about it and finishing the cup of tea, Old Man Guang still couldn't think of a reasonable plan to trick her. Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. Anyway, I'm thick-skinned. I'll just say it. A teacher for a day is a father for life. The old man had taught her once back then. There should still be a bit of a teacher-student relationship, right? With that thought, Lu Fei finally got out of bed. She had 2 panda eyes. It was obvious that she hadn't slept the entire night. Coincidentally, the waiter delivered breakfast at this moment. Lu Fei took the breakfast in a daze and ran straight to the bathroom in a daze, as though she hadn't seen Chen Guang at all. Just like that, Chen Guang sat by the window and looked at her wriggling on the floor like a zombie with black lines on his forehead. When the woman started taking off her clothes without closing the bathroom door, Chen Guang finally reacted.
Chance. What?
You said I was peeping? How could I do such a thing? I was just looking at my phone. Quietly hiding beside the bathroom door, Chen Guang didn't dare to poke his head out. Being quick-witted, he decisively turned on the camera and poked it out. My Popcorn 6S comes with a flipping camera function. How considerate. Chen Guang swallowed his saliva and chuckled as he looked at the screen. Lu Fei had just taken off her little pig on a sunny day pajamas, revealing her smooth, mirror-like back.
Stuffed.
As expected, one shouldn't wear underwear when sleeping. Then, without turning back, she casually closed the bathroom door. Gigi Smita. After waiting for a long time, when she finally came out, Chen Guang was already sitting at the dining table, picking his teeth as though nothing had happened. They even delivered steak for breakfast. How luxurious. It's completely different from my impression of hotels. Lu Fei didn't know what had happened. She used a towel to dry her wet hair and walked over to sit on the dining table. After taking a shower, she seemed to be in a better state of mind. However, the movement of her head to the side and raising her hand caused the collar of her pajamas to fold up a little. Chen Guang's gaze went straight inside. Lu Fei pulled up her pajamas and glared at him. With my net worth, it's $1 million just to take a look. Chen Guang chuckled and quickly turned his head away. He took another sip of water and pretended to be an expert. It's so expensive. If I take a few more glances, I won't be able to pay off my debt for the rest of my life. When she finally finished eating, Chen Guang's expression changed. Lu Fei, I have an honorable and difficult task to entrust to you. Lu Fei was shocked and put down the glass of milk in her hand. What is it? Please tell me. Help me buy 3 pairs of 3-gun underwear.
There was a small accident last night.
Chapter 232. Lu Fei sucked in a breath of cold air and glared at him for about 10 seconds before she finally came back to her senses. Yesterday, you were so handsome that my face was covered in blood. Even now, when I look at you, my face is still red and my heart can't control itself. Tonight, I was going to give you more benefits. In the end, now, I'm still unable to extricate myself from your handsomeness last night, but you suddenly turned into a shameless clown. How could I acknowledge someone like you as my master? How could I be infatuated with such a man? Am I blind, or what? I can't get used to your sudden change in style. Can't I? What should I do? This is a bit troublesome. You can't blame me. In that situation yesterday, I was just an innocent virgin and couldn't control myself at all. Hey, if I put it like this, can you understand my feelings at that time? Chun Guang had a headache and his face was full of distress. Lu Fei glanced at him impatiently and couldn't say a word for a long time. You drew a map last night, right? Although this shows that I'm very charming, and it's something to be proud of. But doesn't this also mean that I've fallen into a trap of my own making? I purposely seduced him and got the map, and then I have to buy underwear for him? To think that I, the dignified Lu Fei, the eldest daughter of the De Chuan Lu family, actually fell into the situation of buying underwear for someone with 3 shots. Just thinking about it makes me feel awkward. What should this old lady do? Forget it. I'll pay back the debts I owe from my previous life. You're still pretending to be innocent after getting a bargain. Luckily, I've seen through you. All right, I'll buy it for you. She chose to admit defeat. Chun Guang happily squeezed her hand. Thank you. You're really a good person.
Damn.
I've been given a good person card just like that. When Lu Fei stood in front of the men's luxury goods store with a veil covering her face, her mind was still in a daze. She really couldn't find the underwear that Chun Guang had specifically asked for. She had been walking around the Prince building for more than 2 hours, and her legs were about to turn to jelly. She really wanted to call Chun Guang and scold him. Can you not be so picky? You can just buy any brand of underwear. Why did it have to be 3 shots? But in the end, she did not do so. Since she had already accepted the good guy card, it would be hard for her not to fulfill his request. Lu Fei didn't expect that she was trying to fish from a tree. What kind of place was the prince's building? It was full of luxury stores. A popular brand like 3 Guns would not be able to enter at all. At that moment, Chun Guang, who was sitting on the computer and locked in a fierce battle with Jiang Liuxiu, was completely unaware of Lu Fei's dilemma and embarrassment. That was because this strange opponent, who refused to add him as a friend no matter what, had come again. Since the glorious yet arduous mission had been entrusted to Lu Fei, old Master Guang expressed that he wouldn't doubt the person he used and wouldn't use the person he doubted. Instead, he would allow me to have a good fight with this destined enemy of mine for 300 rounds. Chun Guang didn't notice that the number of spectators in the battle between the two had already shot up to 5,000. The reason was very simple. This ID, Jiang Liuxiu, was already firmly at the top of the national server. His celestial ladder points as high as 8,800 were simply unbearable. He was only 1,200 points away from the Tieba Almighty's 10,000 points. Still, this wasn't the weirdest thing. This ID, which had recently been on the top of all the major video highlights, the terrifying number 1 on the national server, had actually been matched into a match with less than 4,000 points. This strange phenomenon caused the originally widely criticized Dota 2 match system to be once again bombarded with criticism. Of course, it also attracted a lot of attention to this match, which was destined to be a massacre of noobs. A lot of people wanted to know how this number 1 on the national server, who had recently not only abused noobs, but also professional players, would torture this group of kids with less than 4,000 points. It wasn't until the details of Chun Guang's ID, which had been wittily renamed to Master Guang, was dug up and once again flooded the Dota 2 channel that a lot of people were suddenly enlightened. Many people suddenly remembered that this was the mysterious player who had also caused a stir in Tieba and the forums more than a month ago. His enigmatic and cheap cat, and even the few matches where he had switched to the later stages of the game, were equally dazzling and convincing. However, this brother seemed to be very lazy and didn't really rush for points. He had also been sanctioned by Jiang Liuxiu some time ago, so his popularity had dropped slightly recently. These two were matched together again? Had they crossed the 4,000-point gap? What was originally a massacre of noobs had suddenly turned into a pinnacle showdown between 2 top experts and a group of noobs. Normal Dota was supposed to be a game for 5 people. Were these two going to forcibly turn the game into a 1v1? For such a strange match to appear, these two were destined to be enemies. Or was it that the automatic match system was witty enough to forcibly create a pinnacle situation, ignoring the difference in celestial ladder points, and deliberately creating a situation where each of them was fighting 1 against 4? All sorts of factors had silently pushed this originally ordinary celestial ladder competition to the pinnacle. The number of spectators quickly exceeded 5,000, and it continued to rise. Chun Guang was playing the Blackbird mid laner, who had recently become very popular in the national server. Opposite him, Jiang Liuxiu had pulled out Carl, the man who claimed to have 10 skills. The two decisively fought back and forth, competing with each other. Chun Guang was gnashing his teeth in anger. "I'm going to fix you." What he didn't notice was that the CPU usage of this super-configured computer was 50% higher than normal. It felt like he was playing Dota 2 at the same time. Meanwhile, in the Tongtian Holy Grail's world in the cup, Liuli was sitting naked in front of a virtual computer, desperately typing away with a wretched smile on her face. The general picture was basically no different from the back view of a goddess playing a game naked that was widely circulated on the internet. Someone wanted to see the front? Sorry, it was all a vast expanse of white fog. Small fry. Wanna fix me?
Dream on.
VS is coming over in the fog? Wanna catch me? It's about to reach 6. Wanna rush over to trade health with me and smash big? Top lane is an invisibility talisman. Wanna control talisman? VS is coming to ambush me again? Ready to cross the tower to kill me? Liuli's nagging caused Lord Guang to directly collapse. He had lost unjustly and died with everlasting regret. Of course, Liuli knew his every move like the back of her hand and predicted the enemy's moves. Because what Chun Guang had to face was basically a roundworm in his stomach. As long as Liuli wanted to, she could directly see through Chun Guang's thoughts through the Tongtian Holy Grail. This was simply more OP than opening a map. Of course, she didn't usually have such a bad taste, but as long as she faced Chun Guang in the game, she couldn't help but become unscrupulous. Well, as long as I can play happily, it's not like I'm cheating. It's completely reasonable. Casually pushing her staff to predict and dodge Chun Guang's big move, Liuli shrugged. On the other side, Lu Fei finally broke down. She wouldn't look for the 3 shots even if she was beaten to death. Instead, she stood in front of the CK store and fiercely tore off her veil. Forget it. Why the hell would she buy 3 shots? 3 shots were underwear, but CK wasn't underwear? Forget it. She'd better tell him first. Lu Fei dialed Chun Guang's number. Chun Guang, who was immersed in the grief of Jiang Luyao dodging his big move and then counterattacking with his dying blood, answered the call with an expression of eating **T. Huh. No 3 shots? How can this be called a shopping paradise? How shameful. What did you say? CK. What a strange English name. Where did this random brand come from? Forget it, help me buy one. I'm going to be rich soon, so I'll throw one away after wearing it. I'm too lazy to wash it. Oh right, I want a 4-cornered one. With that, Chun Guang hung up the phone with a snap. He was about to be resurrected. Lu Fei stared blankly at her phone. The busy tone kept beeping, and the veins on her forehead bulged. You said CK is a random brand. A pair of underwear costs more than 600 yuan, and you're telling me it's a random brand? And you want to buy a dozen? Wear one and throw one away. My heart aches for you. I was going to pay for you, but don't blame me for being heartless. Lu Fei decisively opened her notebook and typed 12 pairs of Creek underwear, a total of 7,320 yuan. Then she walked into the store, grabbed 12 pairs, and threw them on the counter. Pack them all. Lu Fei? Just then, a man standing by the counter, about to pay, turned his head and saw her. He exclaimed softly. Lu Fei turned to look at the man and frowned. Why did she bump into him here? He was the winner of the 4th round of Xiangjiang's car racing competition 2 years ago, the man who had won a total of 7 million yuan and one of the best local drivers in Xiangjiang, He Tianzhao. Chapter 233. 2 years ago, when He Tianzhao was racing on the mountain track, Lu Fei was just a little girl standing on the sidelines cheering. However, because of her outstanding appearance and the 10 bodyguards sent by Uncle Chung to stand beside her, her identity seemed to be far more noble and unique than the average audience. At that time, He Tianzhao was shocked by Lu Fei, a fan he met for the first time. With the power of winning the championship, he launched a fierce emotional attack on Lu Fei, who stayed in Xiangjiang for a short time. However, although his driving skills were good, Lu Fei could not rise to feelings for him because of his driving skills. He thought that he was great because he could win the championship, but he never thought that he was just an ordinary person after all. Of course, in view of Lu Fei's powerful background, He Tianzhao could only pretend to be free and easy at that time, saying that she was still young, he would wait for her, and so on. Lu Fei only thought that he was a joke, and her mood at that time was also very simple. I like racing, and I also like to watch others race, but it doesn't mean that I have to throw myself into your arms just because you are good at racing. If you're thirsty, why don't you go look for those racing girls? What status do I have that a mere racing family dares to have thoughts about me? Of course, later facts proved that it was not that his driving skills could not move her, it was purely that He Tianzhao's driving skills were not godly enough. Like Chen Guang, he did not even say a few words to Lu Fei from the beginning, let alone take the initiative to hook up with her. As a result, when she looked at Chen Guang, her eyes were full of stars. There was no need to seduce him. He Tianzhao, on the other hand, was completely unlucky. He thought that he would never have the chance to meet Lu Fei again. After all, although he was known as the top racer in Xiangjiang, compared with Lu Fei's rich family, he was still not on the same level. But he never expected that after 2 years, Lu Fei would come to Xiangjiang again. Not only that, she actually became the spokesperson of a certain racer. This racer directly ran the strongest result of 139.54 yesterday. Yesterday, He Tianzhao was also one of the people who went to find Lu Fei to inquire about the news, but he was also stopped by Uncle Chung. In fact, He Tianzhao had performed quite well yesterday, driving his modified Dodge Viper to an average speed of more than 137 kilometers per hour. He was also one of the people who had broken Diesel's record. Last night, he had thought that he still had a chance. He had thought that the mysterious racer might just be a racer hired by Lu Fei. Until today, when he saw Lu Fei buy men's underwear in the CK store, and a dozen at once, he felt that something was wrong. He Tianzhao. Lu Fei froze for a moment before she hurriedly picked up the CK underwear that she had carelessly thrown on the cashier counter. She looked a little embarrassed. Although he didn't have any thoughts about this person, he was at least acquainted with him. He was a little embarrassed that he had seen him buying so many men's underwear. He Tianzhao looked at Lu Fei's actions, and his heart almost broke. Is this for that racer? Lu Fei subconsciously wanted to say no, but she immediately realized that the underwear scattered all over the table was obviously worn by a young man. If she didn't push it on Chen Guang's head, who should she push it on? Make up another man for yourself? Would others believe it? Useful? Why should I be afraid of He Tianzhao? She might as well go along with what he was thinking. It would also save her the trouble of this insensible guy coming over these few days. What if Chen Guang thought that she had an old lover in Xiangjiang? She simply stopped panicking and shrugged indifferently. Yes, my husband doesn't like to wash it, and I'm too lazy to wash it. I'll buy more at once, hee. He Tianzhao's pupils shrank. His heart felt as if it had been whipped, and he felt even more unwilling. This was a woman with a huge amount of money. When I won the championship, you didn't even spare a glance at me. But now you're still with a racer.
Why?
Looks like he's your sugar daddy. Based on what? He tried hard to suppress his jealousy and anger, but in the end, he couldn't.
Why?
Lu Fei rolled her eyes.
Why?
You're so strange.
Who are you?
Do we know each other well? Do I need to ask for your permission to do anything? Although Lu Fei was usually very shy and easy to talk to in front of Chen Guang, if others dared to provoke her, she would have such a temper. With her temper, she might be considered quite good among the ladies, not to mention that she was originally a rebellious racing girl. I don't accept this. He Tianzhao was ridiculed by Lu Fei in public, but he didn't dare to really get mad at her. The bodyguards sent by Uncle Chung were already eyeing him from behind. He could only flush with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Lu Fei took her card and underwear pockets from the cashier and turned to leave. It's none of my business whether you accept it or not. I also participated in the race yesterday. I also finished 137. He Tianzhao followed behind Lu Fei and didn't buy anything. Lu Fei didn't want to pay attention to him at all. She still walked quickly with her long legs, only feeling that there was a big fly following behind her. He Tianzhao's angry voice came from far behind. Tonight, I'm in the same group as your GTR. I didn't even go all out yesterday. His 139 is nothing at all. I'll make you understand. Who's the real powerful racer? I'll teach him a lesson. Listening to this person's slightly crazy tone, Lu Fei suddenly turned around, but He Tianzhao had already disappeared. Obviously, after He Tianzhao said those harsh words, he turned around and left. Lu Fei frowned slightly. She just remembered that before He Tianzhao became a racer, he was just a small henchman who fought and killed on the streets of Xiangjiang all day long. He was a fierce person. After becoming a racer, his status became higher, but his temper didn't change. Instead, he became even more arrogant and would do anything to achieve his goals. Because of Uncle Chung, he really didn't dare to do anything to her. But in an occasion like mountain racing, his room to play was countless times larger. After all, on a fast-moving track, no matter what happened, it could be blamed on the accident. Especially since he wasn't an ordinary racer, but a top racer in Xiangjiang whose level wasn't bad. He could have used a dirty move on Qinguang without anyone noticing. I seem to have accidentally caused trouble for Qinguang, but something wasn't right. With He Tianzhao's character, it wouldn't matter even if she spoke to him nicely. On the contrary, He Tianzhao would take the initiative to guess that she had become Qinguang's woman. The more she explained to him, the worse it would be. From the moment he saw her buying men's underwear in the CK store, she was destined to become like this. Lu Fei couldn't help feeling a headache. She was a little unlucky. It was all that guy's fault. He insisted on buying some 3-shot underwear. Otherwise, she would have bought it and left. How could she have met this fly? Back at the hotel, Lu Fei angrily grabbed all the underwear out of her bag, raised her hand, and threw them in front of Qinguang. At this time, Qinguang was sitting on the sofa, watching a Cantonese program with a painful expression. He had already been defeated by Zhang Luhua in 2 rounds. Alas, it's not even a 3-shot underwear. This underwear will definitely affect my performance. Qinguang pursed his lips, grabbed a random package and tore it open. He pinched the fabric with his hand. Hey, I've never heard of this random brand, but the fabric is pretty good. It's almost the same as my favorite 3-shot underwear. Hehe, CK, a luxury brand founded by Calvin Klein in 1968. The one in your hand is 610, and you bought a total of 12, totaling 73.20.
Do as you see fit.
When will you pay me back? Qinguang, who was drinking water. Pfft. Chapter 234. After spending a lot of effort, Qinguang still could not recover from the pain of spending more than 7,000 to buy a dozen underwear. Looking at the pile of underwear boxes thrown all over the sofa, his heart was bleeding. Can I get a refund? Yes, but I don't have the face to go. Do you want to go yourself? Lu Fei sat down next to him, too lazy to care about him. The more she thought about how she had met He Tianzhao, the angrier she got. Qinguang did not have the face to ask Lu Fei to pay for it. Although his heart ached, he could not cheat her of money even if she did not lack it. His hands trembled as he took out his phone. Your PayPal account. I'll transfer the money to you. Lu Fei turned to look at him. Seeing his serious and pained expression, she said, Come on, your face is almost rotten from the heartache. Let's not talk about this. I'll tell you another piece of bad news. CK. What news in the world could be worse than spending more than 7,000 on a pile of underwear? I won't accept it. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. After a long time, Lu Fei finally pulled him to tell her about He Tianzhao. Unexpectedly, Chen Guang just curled his lips and shrugged. What's there to worry about? Scared me. I thought it was a big deal. He drives a Dodge Viper, right? I have an impression of that car. A naturally aspirated 8.4 LV10 engine with nearly 800 horsepower. The starting speed is fast and smooth, and the explosive power is strong. But that's it. He only has one chance to get close to me. He might be faster than me at the start, but it depends on the specific position. In short, as long as I overtake him once, he can forget about getting close to me again. It's that simple. On the other hand, Chen Guang was filled with disdain for Lu Fei's actions. Thinking about it carefully, the pile of underwear hurt more. Although he was not short of money, this was not the way to spend it. If I use it sparingly, I can live for several lifetimes with tens of millions. If you keep losing like this, I'm afraid it won't last until I enter the coffin. It's not Pierre Cardin's underwear. Thank you so much. Hey, you seem to know the opponent's models like the back of your hand? Lu Fei was indescribably surprised. Seeing that he seemed to be prepared and had a card up his sleeve, she felt a little more at ease. Chen Guang shrugged. Are you kidding me? It's not like I didn't do anything in the room today. I had a hard time searching for information on the internet. You can find out the horsepower of a modified naturally aspirated engine just by looking up information. A normal naturally aspirated Dodge Viper has 654 horsepower. Lu Fei was even more surprised, wondering when her good brother had become an expert in theory. Chen Guang shrugged.
Don't be infatuated with me.
I'm the god of racing. I can guess 80 or 90% just by looking at the speed of the other party on the big screen. At that moment, Lu Fei's phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was from Jia. Sister Lu Fei, this is the information on Brother Racing God's opponent tonight. I've already sent it to Brother Racer God, so I thought I should send you one as well. Lu Fei rolled her eyes and glared at Chen Guang. She finally knew where this guy got the information from. I really don't believe you. For the entire afternoon, Chen Guang was bored to death. He couldn't continue playing games, and even if he wanted to read some physics and chemistry, he could only fantasize because he didn't bring a book. There were many Cantonese channels on the TV stations in Xiangjiang. The most annoying thing was that such a high-end five-star hotel didn't have any special programs that adults like to watch. He wanted to find something else to ambush the world in the cup, but because the next time was destined to be the world of punishment, he couldn't raise his fighting spirit. He could only walk around the room like a headless fly. From time to time, he would climb onto the fitness equipment and fiddle around for a while. From time to time, he would sit on the sofa and fight with Lu Fei for the remote control. Recently, a certain Korean star named Song Joong-ki had become unreasonably popular. At this time, Lu Fei was watching Descendants of the Sun, starring this young man who had made a comeback. Looking at Lu Fei staring at the beautiful mermaid lines of little brother Song who was working out on the TV, Chen Guang finally found something interesting. I don't need to say anything else. I also have fitness equipment here. I'll find a suitable reason to quickly take off my coat and show off my cool figure that's even cooler than little brother Song. Originally, I didn't want to be so coquettish. It's all your fault for daring to watch such an immodest TV series in front of me. I definitely can't tolerate it. Thinking of this, he first turned on the treadmill and adjusted it to high gear. After running for more than 10 minutes, he was really sweating profusely. Then, Lord Guang naturally took off his clothes. Lu Fei turned her head and looked at his strange appearance. She almost laughed out loud.
All right.
Save some strength. There's still a competition tonight. What's there to see with your bony figure? Chen Guang was dumbfounded. Why was the script different from what he thought? He pointed at his trembling chest muscles. You call this ribs? Is the pig you raise so strong? Have you ever seen such a big rib? My figure isn't better than that person on TV? Lu Fei spat. What right do you have to be compared to Brother Zhong Ji? Chen Guang was furious. He wrapped his coat around his body. I can't be bothered with you. Then, he quickly took a shower and went back to his bedroom. He slammed the door and slammed it shut. Lying on the bed, he suddenly remembered that he hadn't opened WeChat for a long time. When he opened it, there were actually dozens of messages. About 80% of them were sent by Jiang Yage. She had added some extra content to the photos, but they were barely restrained. No matter how scary the words she added were, at least this woman didn't send any large-scale private photos that could cause an accident. Speaking of which, her Photoshop skills were really improving day by day. Look at this beautiful artistic font. TSK, TSK. Later on, I can help those writers who write on Qijian to make the cover. Other than the photos, there were some other super useless things. For example, I met a 23-year-old newcomer actor today. I'm dying of laughter. He said he started watching me act on TV when he was 3 years old. Does he think I'm stupid? At that time, I had just landed. I've long since stopped falling for this kind of old-fashioned pickup line. Also, I ate something delicious today. I wanted to buy some for you, but I don't have a chance to come to Wujing in the near future. It's pretty boring. Chen Guang rolled his eyes and only replied with one message. Good luck. He didn't even know what he was trying to express. Good luck? Was it her celebrity career? Or was it the size of the photos? Whatever. Looking at Jean Shuyue's few messages, it was much simpler. Jean Shuyue didn't have the habit of sharing her trivial life matters. She only sent a message. I've heard about your family. Do you need any help? This woman is really well informed. Could it be that she knows about my mother? Chapter 235. Chen Guang did not expect Jean Shuyue to take the initiative to send him a message to express her concern. Then why didn't she call me? Just as he was thinking about this, he immediately saw the next message. So the matter has been resolved. Then I'm relieved. Anyway, good luck. So that's how it is. Her news is really more than I imagined. Chen Guang thought about it and replied, Thank you. After looking at the WeChat messages from his left and right hands, Chen Guang's mind flashed again, and he decided to open Weibo to take a look. Then his brand new popcorn 6P that he was so proud of almost crashed. *CK. What's going on? He took a closer look and saw thousands of message notifications. Clicking on it, there were more than 3,000 likes and more than 1,000 replies. Chen Guang was shocked. Could it be that the last time he took his left and right hands for a stroll at the amusement park had been recognized? Am I going to become an internet celebrity? He took a closer look. *CK. The replies were getting worse and worse, and all of them were cursing him. Most of them were replies to Chen Guang's previous comment on Jiang Yage's Weibo. Obviously, the people who liked the post had malicious intentions. They wanted to frame him up. Hey, didn't I just complain? Is there a need to be so evil? You guys are so free all day long. Resisting the urge to delete the Weibo post, Chen Guang read the replies one by one and finally understood why his mild comment was framed. Jiang Yage's eyes are 2F** King Sharp. She actually liked my post. Are you reminding your fans to focus their firepower? Even if I hide in your tens of thousands of replies and slander you a little, you can still find me. How free do you have to be? Returning to his homepage, perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. He actually gained more than 900 fans in one go. It seemed that they were all here for Jiang Yage's praise. The Weibo post that Chen Guang had posted 4 months ago, in addition to Sun Xiaoxuan's reply, was filled with replies from Jiang Yage's crazy fans. Most of them weren't pleasant to hear, and there were more than 200 of them. There might be paparazzi hiding in there, but it didn't matter. Jiang Yage had only liked one of her Weibo posts. No one could dig anything out. By Nyangzi, the B***TSH, even hid in the middle and replied with a meaningful hee-hee. His invisible pretense was the deadliest. Just as Chen Guang was refreshing the page, ding-dang. The total number of fans had exceeded 1,000. Chen Guang pursed his lips. All right, even if I become an internet celebrity as a hater of Jiang Yage, it's not a bad choice. My fans are all living people. If he had tens of thousands of followers, he would be able to accept advertisements. Should I say a few more insults later, and then let Jiang Yage scold him? Thinking about it carefully, as long as he could survive, he might really become an internet celebrity. While scrolling through Weibo, he caught a glimpse of the news of the Xiangjiang car gambling competition last night. Although this kind of competition couldn't be seen in public, it still had a certain range of influence on Weibo. At least, Chun Guang took the lead last night to break the record of the top car King Diesel 4 years ago, which had been hyped up by many people in the underground racing circle. When he clicked on the text, Chun Guang broke out in a cold sweat. There was a photo of the matte GTR speeding from the front. Obviously, it was a screenshot of the race organizer from the video taken by the high-speed camera. However, these high-speed cameras couldn't have their own flash system. Otherwise, it would be a trap for the driver. Therefore, although the matte GTR in the picture looked clear, Chun Guang, who was sitting in the driver's seat, was completely dark, so he didn't have to worry about being recognized. However, Chun Guang was careful. He quickly took out the soft mask he got last night from the box next to him and put it on his face. He stood in front of the mirror and looked at himself. He was satisfied. He didn't know which master in Xiangjiang made this soft mask. The material was quite exquisite. Wearing it on his face, not only did it not feel suffocating, but it also gave him a cool feeling. The material was light and soft. If it weren't for the smiling face of the Secret Service team in the mirror, Chun Guang would almost think that he wasn't wearing a mask. Not only did it not affect his vision, but the opening of the nose and mouth were also unique. It didn't destroy the overall artistic feeling of the mask, and it also made Chun Guang speak without any difficulty. What a cool chat. Okay, from the moment I go out, I won't take off this mask. Uncle Chun came over at about 4 o'clock. When he saw Chun Guang, he said with a smile, "Little brother, did you sleep with Cash last night?" Chun Guang jumped back. Is it possible that this big boss is interested in the real money that the old man risked his life for? This is a big shot who was shot in the throat. Can I leave this hotel alive? Lu Fei patted Chun Guang's head behind him. What are you afraid of? Uncle Chun wants to help you. You can't always walk around with a big box, can you? You have to take at least 3 boxes later. Chun Guang shrugged. 7. Uncle Chun didn't want to waste time with this group of young people. He waved his hand and said, "Little brother, give me the cash and give me your bank account number. I will ask someone to transfer it to you from my private account. In this way, no one can find your trace." Ah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Chun Guang was extremely embarrassed. 1,000,000 yuan was nothing in her eyes. Originally, Chun Guang planned to go out at 6 o'clock, but Lu Fei insisted that he leave 2 hours earlier. The reason was very simple. Lu Fei's original words were as follows. You should be a little more familiar with the track. Be a little more serious. The group first went to Jie's modification factory. Jie was checking the engine compartment of the matte GTR, afraid that something would go wrong. Hearing someone behind him, he looked back and found that Chun Guang was wearing a soft mask on his face. Obviously, he had no intention of taking it off. Jie completely understood that this man was planning to play mysterious until the end. He was glad that he had kept his mouth shut yesterday. He hurriedly told everyone the story he had made up last night, as if he was asking for credit. Chun Guang commented, "Exaggerated, too exaggerated. If you boast too much, others won't believe you." Lu Fei stepped on Jie's foot again. That's right. You might as well just say that I'm a gigolo kept by Lu Fei and that I can't be seen. That way, the credibility will be at least 80% higher. Get lost. Lu Fei was furious. About 15 minutes later, the matte GTR finally reappeared on the mountain track after disappearing for most of the day. Some drivers or fans who had arrived early were so excited that they hurriedly followed. In any case, this car was last night's temporary champion. They hurriedly followed behind him to learn his skills. Every little bit counts. Humph. You think you can keep up with Brother Racing God's car? Dream on. Lu Fei regained her ability to roast them. 10 minutes later, Lu Fei began to yawn violently. I say, why don't you drive faster? What's the big deal about the entire journey of 60 kilometers per hour? What's the meaning of stopping at every turn? Behind the black matte GTR, there was a long line of cars that was about 300 meters long. A large group of people were yawning madly, their eyes still drowsy. It was too boring. Could this person be toying with us? Is the driver the same as yesterday? These people were a little drunk. You're the new record holder of the mountain track. Are you humiliating us by running like this? But gradually some smart people finally reacted. This guy is familiarizing himself with the track. CKU. You ran 139.54 kilometers last night. Now you're telling us that you're familiarizing yourself with the track. That's too much. Chapter 236. You're not humiliating us. You're humiliating all the racers you killed last night. Chen Guang didn't think that much. There were many reasons why he could drive the magically modified Alto steadily at 400 kilometers per hour in the racing gods' training ground. First, it was the bug in the strengthening parameters. Second, it was because he had died so many times that he knew the route like the back of his hand. He had to remember it. If he didn't, he would die in minutes. The reason why he stopped at every corner was that he had to remember the characteristics of all the corners. From the angle of the turn, to the change in the inclination of the road, to the difference in the width of the yellow line on both sides of the road, he had to memorize all of it. It seemed that no one could pose a threat to him now. God knew what would happen when he entered the battle to protect the car. So, the racing god, Chen Guang, got serious. Regardless of how Lu Fei ridiculed him, Chen Guang did not speak a single word from the start to the end. Every single time he stopped at a bend, he would only turn his head and squint his eyes like a scanner, taking in the entire situation at the bend. Gradually, Lu Fei stopped talking. Chen Guang was serious. Although she couldn't see his face through the mask, his eyes were so handsome. Finally, when it was 7:30, both the racers and the fans arrived one after another. There seemed to be more people than yesterday. At least, there were about 3,000 more people in the parking lot of the starting point. Apart from these ordinary fans, there was another group of people who stood out. Even though there were only a dozen people in casual clothes, both the fans and the racers couldn't help but look in that direction. No one would have thought that on the second day of the race, there would be a new king. And there were two of them. The king of Thailand, Wu Panjuniao, 21 years old. 5 years ago, at the age of 16, he had become famous in the Paris race. So far, he was the youngest king in history. He was called the Dark Knight Demon. He had mastered the strange drifting and cornering technique. He often overtook his opponents when they weren't paying attention. Back in the Paris auto racing competition, it was only when he won the final victory and was about to take away 7 luxury cars that people suddenly realized that this slender man who was as beautiful as a woman was already the king of cars of the day. The second was the king of Japan, Ryoichi Takahashi. He was the absolute overlord of the Tokyo auto racing competition 6 years ago. Nicknamed the Burning God of War, he was the world's best racer at driving a GTR. His master once drove the first-generation GT R32 to slaughter his peers in the formal European arena. Although he was a famous master, he did not choose to become a registered official player. Instead, he threw himself into the underground racing without hesitation and eventually surpassed his master to become the recognized king of cars. The student surpassed the master. Interesting. Ryoichi Takahashi, this newcomer chose GTR just like you. Wu Panjuniao shook his unique sharp voice and said with a faint smile. Ryoichi Takahashi smiled confidently. Of course, because the GTR is the most perfect racing car in the world. If it weren't for those despicable Europeans, my master would have dominated the racing world. Really? Wu Panjuniao was no longer interested in talking to this nationalist. If Ryoichi Takahashi knew that Chen Guang drove a GTR only because it was not his own car at all. He drove whatever car Wang Qing gave him. Even if Wang Qing took out a magically modified Jetta, Chen Guang would still accept it. Thankfully, if it were not auto, Ryoichi Takahashi would not be able to show off. Yuan, can you take me there? I've seen his video. This newcomer is really strong. I want to chat with him. Wu Panjuniao turned his head and said to his driver, Yuan, who was the champion of last year's Xiangjiang auto racing competition. Yuan thought for a moment. I can only try. He doesn't seem to like contacting outsiders. The middle-aged man sitting next to the GTR is our Mr. Tang from Xiangjiang. He has a very high status. He is a big shot who is specially escorting him. Wu Panjuniao raised his eyebrows. Interesting, even more interesting. It's not impossible to say hello, right? Let's go. Let's try. Yuan had no choice but to bring Wu Pan Junyao to Chen Guang's direction. Before the two of them got close, they were stopped by Uncle Cheng's bodyguards. However, as the champion of last year's race, Yuan was a little famous in the local area. One of the bodyguards knew Yuan and asked him politely what he was doing here. Yuan pointed to Wu Pan Junyao behind him. This is Thailand's racer king, Mr. Wu Pan Junyao. He wants to talk to the driver in this GTR. The bodyguard could not make up his mind. After thinking for a while, he asked Lu Fei for her opinion. Thailand's racer king wants to talk to you. Are you interested? Lu Fei turned to ask Chen Guang. In fact, she was very excited. The former racer king was unattainable and arrogant. Chen Guang had only finished the first round, and he actually took the initiative to talk to him. The racer king was indeed the racer king. He could immediately see how good Chen Guang was and took the initiative to talk to him. Unexpectedly, Chen Guang pouted. What's there to talk about? I'm not interested. Huh? Is that so? Lu Fei was a little disappointed. She turned to look out the window, intending to say goodbye to the bodyguard. Just then, Chen Guang finally turned his head to the side and widened his eyes. *CK. A beauty. The racer king. This girl, why are you so cool? Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
See.
Of course I want to see. Alright, I give up. Lu Fei's head was about to explode from his capriciousness. When she turned around and saw his shining eyes, she understood and almost laughed out loud. As a racing fan, Lu Fei had heard of Wu Pan Junyao's deeds. Mr. Wu Pan, you really have a lot of influence. Hearing that they were allowed to go over, Yuan was delighted. Wu Pan Junyao smiled charmingly. Of course, I'm the racer king after all. What are you going to say to him? I haven't thought about it yet. I'll just give him some encouragement. The two walked straight to the GTR's right door. On the other side, Chen Guang had already rolled down the car's window. He used the night light to size up the girl outside and secretly commented. He really did not expect that there's a woman in this world who could be the racer king. She was too beautiful. Look at her small eyes and sharp oval face. It looked like it was carved out with a knife. Her figure was great too. But would her chest be flat? Forget it. Being flat had its benefits. How could one rule the world if one's chest was flat? Hello. Chen Guang took the initiative to greet him in English. Wu Pan Junyao stood by the car door and smiled.
Hello.
Do you have any advice? Chen Guang said with a chuckle, wiping away the saliva that almost leaked out from the corner of his mouth. Wu Pan Junyao gently flipped his hair and pressed both hands on Chen Guang's car door. He smiled even more brightly. I have high hopes for you. You must enter the battle to protect the car. Don't let me not even have a chance to appear. Chapter 237. Chen Guang reacted quickly and reached out to grab Wu Pan Junyao's hand from above. Of course. Usually, Chen Guang wasn't such a frivolous and daring person, but today, Master Guang's decisiveness had been influenced by the outside world. Of course, he didn't think of guarding against it at all and let the sluggishness intensify. Besides, he felt that girls who liked to race cars were quite generous. As the king of cars, this Thai girl must be the most open-minded. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had to take advantage of her. Wu Pan Junyao's snow-white face blushed when Chen Guang suddenly grabbed his hand. He forced a smile and said, "Then I'll wait for your good news." With that, he pulled his hand away and turned to leave. After watching the beautiful king of cars walk away, Chen Guang wound up the car window and turned back to Lu Fei. This girl is really pretty. The skin on the back of her hand is really soft. It's just that her voice is a little hoarse and sounds androgynous. I'm not spouting nonsense, but she's like you, Lu Fei, a perfect goddess. Sigh. If it weren't for the fact that I'm not interested in racing cars, it would be quite exciting to have the opportunity to form a King of Cars team with her. Lu Fei slapped Chen Guang's head. King of Cars, my ass. He should be the King of Cars. I'm a guy.
What? A guy?
That's right. A real man. Thailand's king of cars, hee. What the hell? Master Guang felt nauseous and nauseous. He looked down at his hands, which still smelled of perfume.
I want to die.
I feel terrible. I want to chop my hands off. I actually pinched this damn sissy's hand. And I even pinched him until his face turned red. Damn it. He can't have fallen for me, right? I'm starting to panic. Lu Fei. I don't want to live anymore. Lend me your thigh, and let me cry. With that, Chen Guang turned and pounced on Lu Fei's thigh. Lu Fei was caught off guard.
Hey, cry all you want.
Lend me your thigh, all you want. Why is your right hand grabbing my chest? You shoved your left hand under my butt again. I touched something impure just now. I need to touch the goddess with full marks to resist this evil power. Otherwise, I'll definitely lose today. Lu Fei, you have to help me. You're a goddess with full marks. That damn sissy just now is poisonous. Lu Fei had seen many shameless people, but she had never seen someone as shameless as this. However, in her heart, she was not against Chen Guang's shamelessness. She only turned her head away with a red face. Looking at the similarly crazy men and women outside the window, a strange feeling welled up in her heart. She was exceptionally shy, yet she was reluctant to let go of his demonic hands. Forget it, I thought about massaging his chest yesterday anyway. Let him pinch me a little, I won't lose a piece of flesh. When he's tired of pinching me, he'll let go. Don't put your hand in there. 25 minutes later. Ruffy was almost out of breath. It's almost time for the competition. You are in the first group.
Get up.
Time was running out, and everyone had already gotten into position. Chen Guang reluctantly let Lu Fei out of the car. When she finally closed the door, Chen Guang clenched his fist. Awesome. Yesterday's butt. Today's chest. Tomorrow's upgrade. Lu Fei was not the only one planning this. Chen Guang had planned this from the beginning too. What a shameless pair of adulterers. F***CK. Why am I number 5? This is F***King cheating. When Chen Guang was directed by the competition referee to get into position, he saw his cue number and was stunned. Also, was this Dodge Viper next to him the bastard that Ruffy mentioned yesterday? Wasn't he running 137 yesterday? He was also next to me? The higher the first round, the more he would be pushed to the last 3 rows? Turning his head, Chen Guang smiled again. Fortunately, the McLaren 675 that was eating his dust yesterday was even worse off. It was already in the 4th row. Speaking of which, was the guy driving the Viper sick? What was he trying to say by rolling down the window? It was very noisy outside. He Tianzhao, who was in the Viper, was angrily waving his arms and legs at him, cursing and swearing. However, Chen Guang did not roll down the window, so he could not hear what the guy was saying. Forget it. He was so enthusiastic, so I can't just stand by and do nothing. Chen Guang only smiled at him and gave him the middle finger. Courtesy demanded reciprocity. F***CK. He Tianzhao originally wanted to provoke Chen Guang before the race and launch a psychological attack. In the end, Chen Guang did not respond at all and even gave him the middle finger. Seeing that the guy next to him was so angry that he was slapping the steering wheel, Chen Guang laughed again and turned his head to look ahead. He ignored him and let him be. Speaking of which, there was another girl in front of the starting line today. She was a girl with long black hair that suited his taste. Although her figure was not as good as the girl from yesterday, she still looked like a first-class model, especially with her long black hair that reached her waist like a waterfall. She was really beautiful. She looked noble and elegant, but unfortunately, she was still a bit loose in her bones. She was too generous. No matter what others thought, the old man could not accept his own woman being taken advantage of by others. However, on second thought, the old man was that other person now. Don't worry about who will be the one to take over her in the future. Let the old man feast his eyes first. Could it be that every group had a different type of boob-slinging girl? I missed 7 yesterday. My heart hurts. That's not right. I can't show my face. I can't stand outside with a mask on. If I wear a mask, I will be surrounded at any moment. Thinking about this, my heart hurts even more. There should be a full recording of this race. When I get back, I will ask Lu Fei to help me make a full set. Don't worry about the race, just keep a small part of the highlights. That's right. Let's do this. If others knew that the racing god of this generation, who is destined to be admired by tens of thousands of people, was only thinking about that girl who had exposed her chest in front of everyone when they set off, would those racing fans cover their faces in misery and feel ashamed for him and themselves? However, Chen Guang did not have much time to let his imagination run wild. The race was about to begin. It was different from yesterday. At that time, no one thought that the driver in this matte GTR was so amazing. But today, when the 8 mechanical beasts roared together and madly rushed forward, at least half of the people on the sidelines had their eyes on Chen Guang's car. Regardless of whether the other drivers were convinced or not, they could not hide the fact that he ran at his best yesterday. Chen Guang did not care so much. His movements were smooth and natural. Because of the right-hand steering wheel, his start yesterday was not very good. Today, it was much easier and more familiar. In the flow of traffic, Chen Guang, who was originally lagging behind, was the first to suddenly speed up and go straight to the Audi R8 in front of him. Thanks to the powerful performance that Wang Qing had spent tens of millions of yuan on, the violent 800 horsepower V12 quickly pulled to the limit to provide strong torque, coupled with the assistance of the ultra-lightweight carbon fiber body and Chen Guang's instantaneous continuous gear changes. After 2.5 seconds, Chen Guang suddenly increased the speed to 100 kilometers per hour. Not only that, he did not reduce the gear, but still violently hit the accelerator. He let the tachometer rush into the red zone. The number 5 matte black GTR was extremely crazy and violent from the beginning. The front of the car chased after the R8's tail. Everyone looked at this car with their mouths wide open. This lunatic. How can you speed up like this from the beginning? Your speed is indeed better than the Audi R8 in front of you, but are you not afraid of crashing into it? There are 2 cars in front of you. There is no space to overtake at all. At the same time, He Tianzhao, who was speeding up step by step in the Dodge Viper, was also shocked by the situation on his left. He thought to himself, this guy wants to get rid of me at the beginning? Dream on. Chapter 238. Number 5 GTR is speeding up. It just started and it's speeding up like crazy. It's relying on its performance to overtake the R8 and 911 in front. It's going to crash. Mr. X was indeed an experienced commentator. He had seen through Chen Guang's thoughts the moment Chen Guang started speeding up, and he spoke very quickly. But his words were still filled with disbelief. Such strong cars relying on their performance to overtake weaker cars usually only happened in the middle and late stages of a race. At the start, everyone would be squeezed together. It was obvious that they wanted to crash and forfeit the race. Before Mr. X finished speaking, the Dodge Viper on the other side of Chen Guang did the same thing. The Viper's 780 horsepower naturally aspirated engine might not be as strong and durable as the V12 turbocharged engine in the middle and late stages of acceleration, but at the starting stage of linear acceleration, it relied on its 8.4L displacement to obtain a terrifying propulsion force. The Viper is also speeding up. In the car, Chen Guang glanced at He Tianzhao's actions from the corner of his eye. He was unmoved, and the corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. So he really wants to teach me a lesson? Going against me from the start? Then come. Chen Guang's right hand suddenly exerted force, and the steering wheel swung half a circle to the left. At the moment when he was about to hit the rear of the R8, he suddenly changed direction in the traffic flow to the left sideline. He was going to overtake from the left. Almost at the same time, the Dodge Viper changed to the right. It was also going to overtake the Porsche 911 in front from the right. The fight on the mountain road had reached its climax in less than 5 seconds from the start of the race. Were these two people crazy? Everyone's mind was turning over the same thought at the same time. Even the drivers, Ah Yuan and Wu Panjuniao, had their eyelids twitching, let alone the others. Lu Fei's whole body was tense. Of course, She knew that Chen Guang's driving skills were good, but she had never seen such an intense fight that was close to risking one's life. From her point of view, Chen Guang's biggest advantage was that he could rely on his perfect control of the bends to leave others in the dust. His advantage definitely did not include this kind of situation where he would fly off the track with just a touch. The GTR and Python are about to overtake each other from both sides at the same time. Were they trying to turn the two-lane road into a four-lane road? The R8 and 911 were under immense pressure. They began to move closer to the center. However, there's only a little more than 2 meters of space left for the GTR and Python. Madman! Everyone today is a lunatic. Mr. X couldn't calm down at all as he roared. On the other side, Chen Guang and He Tianzhao simultaneously drove their cars into the gap between the cars in front and the edge of the road. At the same time, he switched to third gear and increased his speed crazily. Compared to these two, the R8 and 911 that were sandwiched in the middle were in an awkward position. Not only were their routes taken away, but their speed was also completely inferior. It was almost as if they were standing still. However, in reality, both of them were moving at almost 150 kilometers per hour. The slightest carelessness and a collision would result in the destruction of the car and the death of the passengers. To Chen Guang's left was the edge of the road. The trees by the roadside were so close that they seemed to be within reach. His eyes were extremely focused. A third of the left tire was already suspended above the drainage ditch. Finally, there was a burst of flame from his exhaust pipe, and the car's speed increased again. He overtook the car at close to 200 kilometers per hour. On the other side, the Dodge Python relied on a stronger thrust to quickly increase its speed to 220 kilometers per hour and successfully overtook Chen Guang. In less than 10 seconds after the race started, the third and fourth, fifth and sixth places had changed positions. What a crazy guy! Ryoichi Takahashi had a charming smile on his face as he said to the short and fat Japanese man beside him, "Naoki, this GTR racer reminds me of a friend from many years ago." "Who?" "Fujihara-kun. Is that so?" On the other side, a Yuan looked disdainfully at the fans who were heaving a sigh of relief. These people are making a fuss out of nothing. He's just relying on the car's power to overtake. The Amaterasu is running pretty well too. Wu Pan Junyao shook his head slightly. "Yuan, can you calculate the width of the GTR and the space left for him by the R8? Just now, the GTR had at most half of its tires suspended. Although your friend's maneuver looks equally thrilling, there's a protective fence on his right side. There's no drainage ditch." Yuan was speechless. On the other side, Lu Fei yanked Jie's collar. Jie, tell me, how's the anti-collision performance of this GTR? Jie's expression changed as he said in embarrassment. In order to reduce the weight and improve the acceleration, the anti-collision performance was not specially strengthened. However, part of the car body was replaced with high-strength carbon fiber, and the overall strength was improved to a certain extent, but not much compared to the original. Although carbon fiber is strong, it's not as tough as steel. Lu Fei let go of his grip and shook Jie off. She frowned as she looked at the GTR on the big screen, which had just been pushed to the back by He Tianzhao. Her eyes were filled with unspeakable worry. Chen Guang was only occasionally crazy, but He Tianzhao's running style was famous for being arrogant. Now that he had overtaken Chen Guang was in danger. If anything happens to him, I want He Tianzhao's life. No matter what the reason is. There's no need for any unnecessary explanations. Lu Fei turned her head and said softly to Uncle Cheng beside her. Uncle Cheng nodded, indicating that he understood. Jie, who was standing beside the two of them, listened with trepidation. On the other side, Chen Guang and He Tianzhao were fighting in the third and fourth positions. Chen Guang had tried to use the bends to overtake the GTR, but the Viper was also famous for being the king of bends. He Tianzhao's level was not bad, and he had purposely taken the road, so he had managed to overtake Chen Guang until the 7th consecutive bend. Following closely behind Chen Guang and He Tianzhao was a Subaru Winged Leopard WRX-ST that had also broken Diesel's record the day before. Although this car was not expensive, it had great potential for modification. This was not an ordinary Winged Leopard. The modifier had put in a lot of effort, and it had long been trained to be a road beast with outstanding performance. The two people in front were fighting, but the Winged Leopard driver was not in a hurry. He just steadily followed behind them, maintaining his fifth position. It was not that he did not want to overtake, but that the two people in front were too crazy. He did not want to act rashly and get himself into trouble for no reason. Actually, the ones who were the most flustered were the Jaguar and Mercedes-Benz SLS drivers who were running at the front. Yesterday, the two of them had barely managed to maintain their top 4 positions, and today was the reason why they were in the front row. After witnessing the collective explosion of the top racers yesterday, the two of them did not have much hope for today's second round. In the end, they were followed by 2 crazy people today. One was the best racer from yesterday, and the other was also in the top 3. The two in front were secretly relieved. If it was not for the Viper and GTR entangling each other, they would have been overtaken long ago. Whether it was the Benz or the vehicle's performance, they were completely outclassed. It was only a matter of time before they were overtaken. Even if they managed to take the lead on the uphill section, they would not be able to hold on for the second half of the downhill section. They were just afraid that the two of them would be as unreasonable when they overtook them as when they started off.
Suddenly,
the engine behind them roared again, as if it was overloaded. 7 consecutive bends. In front of them was that scary Z-bend. The 2 crazy people behind them finally could not hold back. Chapter 239. The Forest Viper is about to make a move. Your friend is quite daring. Wu Pan Junyao said to A Yuan with a smile as he looked at the image that flashed across the huge screen. A Yuan nodded. The GTR's performance at the Z-turn yesterday was indeed amazing. However, He Tianzhao was a local racer from Xiangjiang and would come to the mountain track almost every day. The Z-turn was also his specialty. The Jaguar slowed down to 100 km per hour before entering the turn, and the SLS behind it also slowed down. He Tianzhao controlled his speed to close to 100 km per hour. He overtook the SLS from the inside. Chen Guang followed closely behind. The SLS racer lost the inside line. If he did not slow down, he might hit the fence. He could only slow down again. F***CK. He cursed angrily, but it was meaningless. In the blink of an eye, the Forest Viper and GTR overtook the SLS from the inside line. There was only one Jaguar left in front of them. After rushing out of the first Z-turn, both of them hit the accelerator at the same time and rushed into the second turn. He Tianzhao's speed was controlled at around 105 km per hour. It was not as fast as Chen Guang yesterday, but it was still faster than the Jaguar's speed of 100 km per hour. He sped up easily and got into the Jaguar's inside line. Chen Guang's car maintained a distance of less than a decimeter from the Python. The two of them, one at the front and one at the back, were at nearly the same angle as they forcefully drifted on the inner lane and crossed the middle lane of the drifting Jaguar. First and second. Beautiful. Great job. Tens ho. A Yuan and He Tianzhao were both Xiangjiang racers. Naturally, they would cheer for their teammate. Wu Pan Junyao squinted his eyes. A Yuan, you're wrong. It's not your friend who's really good. It's the GTR.
Why?
A Yuan did not understand. You know, when 2 cars are drifting side by side, the most difficult part is not the car in front, but the car behind. A collision will happen if you're not careful. But look at the distance between the GTR and the Forest Viper. It doesn't change at all during the drift. Such accuracy is already at the millimeter level. Even among the top 10 racers, there are less than 5 who can do this. Of course, those who can't do this are not bad. It's just that everyone has a different style. Mr. Wu Pan, can you do that? No problem. Finally, the second round of the competition became a duel between Chen Guang and He Tianzhao. Who will win? This question was asked by Mr. X on the commentary platform. However, no one laughed at his unprofessionalism. In terms of pure average speed, yesterday's GTR was 139.54, and He Tianzhao's result was above 137. Looking at the whole process, it seemed that there was a huge difference. However, in this kind of competition where people were chasing and overtaking each other, the competition was not just about absolute speed. Fighting and killing each other was the real theme, not to mention that He Tianzhao was currently in the lead. If the slightest detail was not handled properly, it could lead to the car crashing and people dying. The car racing competition wasn't just a competition of absolute speed. More importantly, it was a competition of courage and mental quality. If you can find a suitable opportunity to surpass your opponent quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly, then from then on, you can fly as high as a bird in the sky. However, if you can't rush over, or get stuck when trying to overtake, then you can't blame others. And He Tianzhao was famous in Xiangjiang not only for his absolute speed, but also for his ruthlessness and quick reflexes in this kind of chase and battle. Wanting to overtake his car was known to be harder than ascending to heaven. Even the helicopter, in midair, no longer paid attention to the people behind. The giant screen was the scene of Chen Guang driving the GTR and biting the back of the Dodge Viper. Lu Fei was nervous again. If Chen Guang was another opponent, she might not panic at all, but this He Tianzhao was a lunatic. Normally, he might be afraid of her and be relatively restrained, but Lu Fei, who also raced, knew that when the speed reached a certain limit, the burning passion of racing could ignite all the rationality of the driver. At this time, he would become incomparably dangerous.
Chen Guang, what are you thinking at this time? Don't be silly.
You must find an opportunity to overtake again. Lu Fei could not help but guess so. On the other side, Chen Guang felt a little bored. He yawned, squinted his eyes, swung his hand, and made another perfect and smooth turn. How could such a beautiful person be a boy? It's really a pity. Sigh, I'm also stupid. When I heard that bastard was some Thai car king, I should have thought of it long ago. I must keep this matter to myself. It's too *king shameful. Speaking of which, Lu Fei's body was really great. It was big, round, and elastic, almost comparable to a volleyball. Her face was also very beautiful. No wonder the grandson in front liked her. But so what? Are you half as handsome as me? Then, she would tilt her head and glance at the rearview mirror. Once she saw my handsome face, she would be fascinated by herself. What a terrifying fight. He Tianzhao is worthy of being called the half-mountain killer. His snatching position is extremely fierce. He suppressed the GTR at the back without a chance. The GTR that showed us its peak speed yesterday was completely suppressed by him. Of course, the GTR didn't give up the opportunity either. From the beginning to the end, it was biting tightly behind Python. Every minute and every second was so thrilling and exciting, as though a violent collision would happen in the next moment. The first half of the uphill segment is about to end. Let's see the average speed of both parties, 113. Such an intense competition, both parties' speeds are shockingly fast. It's on par with the GTR's solo lead yesterday. It's about to enter an even more terrifying downhill segment. These two lunatics, it's either you die or I live. This is a battlefield that belongs to the racers. Mr. X's voice was still full of passion, inciting people's fear. Listening to his commentary, be it the spectating racers or the fans, they all broke into a cold sweat for the two of them. He Tianzhao slightly arched his back and stared straight ahead, then quickly drifted away. His eyes were focused on the GTR behind him. His eyes were bloodshot, flashing with madness. He kept muttering to himself, "Come on.
Come on.
I'm going to send you to hell. Brat, do you feel despair?" Chen Guang, who was at the back, yawned again, his left hand wiping away the tears squeezed out from his eyes. "I'm almost done playing. That D*Ned sissy hurt me quite a bit. Speaking of which, will I be able to stick my head in tomorrow? I'm looking forward to it just thinking about it. Let's take down that idiot in front, the V-shaped bend in front. Bastard, don't slow down if you have the guts." Then he suddenly sat up straight and sped up. He Tianzhao slightly cut into the inner lane, intending to slow down and enter the bend, because he knew that it was an almost 180-degree V-shaped bend in front of him. However, from the corner of his eyes, he suddenly saw the GTR behind him speeding up to shorten the distance between them. What is this guy trying to do? This is the downhill segment. You still dare to speed up? At this moment, the GTR suddenly moved to the right. Humph! Trying to overtake from the outer lane.
Dream on.
Without thinking, He Tianzhao also pulled the steering wheel to the right. He did not intend to leave any gap for the GTR.
Slow down obediently.
Despair. He Tianzhao smirked and looked at the rear-view mirror, only to realize that there was nothing behind him. Chapter 240. At that moment, He Tianzhao first heard a strange sound from the left side of his back, followed by a click and the car vibrating slightly. Then, he heard the roar of the engine from his left side. He turned his head but could only see the right side of the GTR. In that short moment, the matte black beast had rushed in front of him. He was overtaken. What the hell happened? He Tianzhao was at a loss. The countless spectators and racers who were watching this scene through the giant screen projection were equally shocked. At that moment, the GTR made a feint, pretending to use the bend to overtake the car on the outside line. Then, when the Viper changed to the outside line, he slammed on the brakes and turned the front of the car behind the Viper. Then, he sped up and changed lanes at the same time, speeding up while cutting into the inside line. The front of the GTR and the rear of the Viper were getting closer as he sped up. The moment he cut into the inside line, they collided. Sparks flew. Maybe it was an accident, or maybe it was within the GTR's driver's expectations, but the slight collision did not affect his speed at all. Then, he completely took over the inside line. He used a higher speed to overtake the car on the yellow line. He Tianzhao roared, "I won't let you succeed." As he roared, he sped up and forced the front of the car onto the inside line. But it was too late. His speed was too fast, and he could no longer take over the inside line. Humph. I can't even stand on the inside line. You're at least 140 kilometers per hour. Let's see how you cross the bend. Just wait for your death. He Tianzhao tried his best to control the car and looked coldly at the GTR in front of him.
Huh? What?
Why is it the side? He's facing me? In front of him, Chen Guang's GTR had already turned sideways. It was almost at a right angle to the road. He wanted to cross the V-shaped bend at 140 kilometers per hour. That was the only way. That was to directly drift across with inertia, and when drifting halfway, forcibly use the momentum to provide a forward thrust to straighten the path. This was inertial drift. It's actually inertial drift. The feint he made earlier wasn't just to deceive me, it was also to adjust the car's position before the inertial drift. He Tianzhao felt a chill run down his spine. He had been completely fooled. Up ahead, Chen Guang's rear end first swung past the sharp end of the V-shaped curve. Then, the front of the car cut across the curve, and the car continued to drift sideways towards the fence next to the curve. But just as the car was about to hit the fence, the abundant power finally pulled the car back. There was only a series of dazzling sparks on the railing before he completely straightened the front of the car and accelerated.
Charge.
With an indomitable aura, Chen Guang snatched first place for the first time. No! He Tianzhao roared crazily. He would never accept such a clean defeat. Lu Fei. I said that I would teach this person a lesson. I'm going to knock him off the cliff. He Tianzhao gritted his teeth and sped up again. This time, he only wanted to charge at the GTR's tail. He wanted to hit the GTR's tail when it made a turn and make the GTR completely lose control. But how was that possible? Chen Guang had had enough. He was a little unhappy that he had been overtaken in the first half of the race. Now that he had finally familiarized himself with the track, he couldn't possibly be worse than yesterday, right? I'll just be a little more serious. I'll run an average speed of 145 kilometers per hour today. The next curve was supposed to be an ordinary C-shaped curve, but Chen Guang suddenly used the amazing divine drift that he had seen yesterday.
It was as accurate as a machine and as stable as Mount Tai. It was just right and flawless. The car was completely stuck to the side of the curve, and the speed was pushed to the limit. He forcefully made the turn at a terrifying speed of 150 kilometers per hour again. The weeds growing under the guardrail were crushed, but the distance between the car and the guardrail was precisely controlled at 3 millimeters, without the slightest deviation. He Tianzhao only wanted to crash into it, but he realized in despair that the GTR was getting further and further away from him. The divine drift at the Z-shaped curve yesterday wasn't a coincidence. This was the scene that gave the audience in front of the giant screen the most impact. Then he made another 2 consecutive hairpin turns. Before the audience could recover from the shock of the C-shaped curve, he continued to drift to the side without slowing down. They were devastated. There was actually someone in the world who could drive a car to such an extent? To be able to control this crazy sprinting machine as precisely as a human's fingers?
Me. No.
I give up. This is my home track. He Tianzhao went completely crazy. He had never experienced such a desperate race. The GTR was like a black devil, quickly devouring him. His dignity as a racer, his pride as a man, was being crushed bit by this person. The taillights of the GTR seemed to be laughing at his eyes coldly. He was so indignant and resentful. This level of drifting. I can do it too. Different from usual, He Tianzhao also pulled the speed to 150 kilometers per hour when he entered the curve. He was going all out. He believed that he could do what the GTR could do, and he had to do it. Then, the front of his car slammed into the guardrail. The car suddenly lost its balance and swung violently, spinning several times in the middle of the road. The rear of the car slammed into the side of the mountain and finally stopped. He Tianzhao tilted his neck, which was almost broken, and stared at the GTR in front of him, which was continuously swerving through an S-curve on the downhill road. He was in despair. He unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the car door with great difficulty, and flipped out of the car. He fell head-first into the gutter and looked up at the broken front axle. His heart was filled with sadness. He could only withdraw from the race. When Chen Guang really finished the whole race at an average speed of 145 kilometers per hour, he disappeared into the darkness again under the protection of the organizing committee's security personnel. More than 50,000 people on the huge mid-mountain racetrack were silent, staring at the data displayed on the giant screen with their mouths agape, unable to speak for a long time. Total time, 7 minutes, 25 seconds, 88 seconds. Average speed, 145. 33 seconds. What was going on with this world? Was the mid-mountain racetrack secretly widened? Speaking of which, his time in the first half of the uphill road was the same as yesterday, and he was still entangled with Python. Did that mean that he only sped up in the second half of the race, and then he broke the record? The news of the GTR familiarizing itself with the track this afternoon, along with the power of another new record, gradually spread among the crowd. This group of people was even more confused. In other words, yesterday was that person's first time running the mid-mountain racetrack? Today, after familiarizing himself with the track, he exerted himself in the second half of the race and ran an average speed of 145. 33? What kind of joyful racing was that? Was he driving a GTR or an F1? Lu Fei smiled brightly, especially when she saw He Tianzhao's miserable state. She felt even more comfortable. Previously, she was still regretting that the last 4 places in the same group as Chen Guang did not have a valuable car. Now, He Tianzhao's Dodge Viper, which cost a lot of money to modify and was worth a lot, had withdrawn from the race. Needless to say, Jenny Turtle, it's you. This car, for example, was a new car worth about 5 million yuan, and He Tianzhao had invested at least 4 million yuan in modification costs, so the total value was more than 9 million yuan. Thank you so much for giving me such a big gift in the second round. Just as he had expected, Chen Guang's call came shortly after and asked, He Tianzhao's car then? No matter how much it costs, even if it's a loss, the old man will admit it. Lu Fei grinned. It won't be a loss. That car is worth about 9 million yuan. You should be happy.
Huh?
He's really the boy of fortune. If he hadn't asked for it, I might not have been able to get his car. Chen Guang's lips split into a wide grin. Chapter 241. Jia was speechless as he listened to the conversation between the two men. Before this, he had suspected that this racing god bro was here for fun, or perhaps he was here for the championship of the first 4 rounds. But now he was 100% sure. This guy was a bandit. He really wanted to take the car away. Sister Lu Fei was his mistress. These 2 men were robbers. You have such a strong motive. Are you worthy of us, the fans and racers who love our cars? Jia looked at Wu Pan Junyao and Takahashi Ryoichi, who were standing on both sides in the distance. He thought to himself, is he really going to use my GTR to become the king of cars? Then, I'll be recorded in the history books. With that thought in mind, Jia gradually became excited again. On the other hand, due to He Tianzhao's accident, the next round of the race was temporarily postponed. The race only resumed after He Tianzhao's car was towed away. He Tianzhao himself was sent to the hospital. Before he left, he gave the car key to a friend. He knew that once he withdrew from the race, he would fall to 8th place. According to the rules of the race, he was not allowed to take the car away. But until then, he still did not think that he might lose his beloved car. He Tianzhao boasted that he and Lu Fei knew each other after all. She would not give him face, right? About an hour later, when his friend really called to tell him the bad news, He Tianzhao thought he had heard wrong. What did you say? Say it again. As he spoke, because he was too emotional, he twisted his body violently. There was a cracking sound in his neck. The bone that he had just corrected was automatically dislocated again. Your car has been targeted. It's locked. Brother Tianzhao, what do we do now? The person on the other end of the phone did not know that He Tianzhao was in big trouble again. He spoke anxiously. He Tianzhao's eyes were spinning wildly, but he could not say a word. Brother Tianzhao, say something. F***CKU. That was the only thought in He Tianzhao's mind before he fainted. Then, he vaguely heard the scream of the nurse, and then he knew nothing else. Chen Guang was not very happy. Although it was not bad to be able to get He Tianzhao's Viper, he calculated the total amount of money he had and could not bring himself to do so. Damn it, the winner of the first round is 1 million. Fine, I'll bear with it even if it's a little less. If you win the second round, you'll give me 5 million. Even though it's a little less, I can still bear with it. But what's the point of 2.5 million for 2 rounds? No matter how he thought about it, he felt that the organizing committee was humiliating the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail. We will accept this grudge. Lu Fei helped him open the lockbox and grinned. Don't worry, there's one more in here. This is 1.5 million and $100. You're not an idiot anymore. Chen Guang's anger immediately turned into joy, and he gave a thumbs up. Well done. More than an hour after the end of the second round of the race, the atmosphere on the mid-mountain racetrack had yet to cool down. Less than half of the 50,000 people had left. There were too many people standing in front of the giant screen, watching the GTR footage being replayed over and over again. Their minds were bombarded by the terrifying average speed of 145.33. No one would have thought that in just one day, the GTR would once again break its own fastest record. When he ran 139.54 yesterday, some people thought that it was just an accidental outperformance. But when it broke its own record again, and performed the terrifying drifting without deceleration again and again, the world finally understood that 139.54 was far from the limit of the GTR. Perhaps 145.33 was also not its limit. Both the racer and the fans felt a strong sense of oppression from the GTR. He wasn't arrogant, and up until now, no one had seen the racer get out of the car. However, people were still suffocated by the records he left behind. They thought of the nickname of the GTR, God of War. Then, the matte GTR driven by that person, would it add the word invincible to the title God of War? Invincible God of War. But that wasn't the only thing that left him in despair. In the second round,
No one managed to break past his 139.54 mark. The fastest was only 139.21 for the McLaren 675, which was pushed to second by Chun Guang yesterday. Not to mention today's 145.33. Even though the race was over, none of the racers were willing to leave. Instead, they joined hands and asked the organizing committee to allow them to train overnight. One super sports car after another roared as they set off. These people didn't dare to hope that they could run a result comparable to the MAT GTR in the competition. Even if they ran without any interference, it would be good to close the gap between them. Finally, some people gradually broke through the barrier of 139.54 in their desperate charge, and some even crossed the previously unattainable limit of 140. However, up until now, each of the remaining 16 racers had run at least 2 laps, and the fastest record was only above 142, still far from 145.33. Such a gap. How despairing was it? Just then, 2 big trucks arrived almost at the same time. The heavy trucks attracted a lot of people's attention. Everyone frowned. It was so late. Did someone still bring their car here? In the parking lot, 2 groups of people moved almost at the same time. Whether it was the racers or the fans, they all understood. It was Pan Junyao and Ryoichi Takahashi's cars. Were the 2 car kings also going to try? Were they already preparing to participate in the race to protect their cars? Indeed, looking at the momentum of the GTR, could anyone take the championship away from him? Was there any other way other than knocking him off the track at the beginning? Sure enough, they could only rely on the car king. When this thought emerged in everyone's mind, the hearts of the people who were almost suffocated by the MAT GTR began to burn again. No one realized that the low-key MAT supercar had become the big devil that everyone expected the car king to defeat. Wasn't the car king the big devil that should be defeated? Some people also realized the problem with this thought. They were suddenly enlightened and surprised. Pan Junyao and Ryoichi Takahashi didn't need to say much to ask others to make way for them. When the 2 of them respectively drove the pitch-black Tiger CTR and another GTR covered in flames to the starting line, all the cars at the front of the track automatically made way for them. Even the racers who were in the middle of the race were left in the middle of the 2 parking lots and sat down quietly in front of a giant screen. The helicopter that had been parked on the tarmac suddenly took off. Mr. X, who was about to go home after a busy day, sat down on the commentary stage again. Under the night sky, the Night Beauty and the Flame War God were each warming up their engines. The air suddenly became extremely heavy. No one dared to breathe. Ah Yuan, the previous champion, held the starting gun and stood at the starting line as the referee. He raised his right hand high.
Bang! Boom!
The pitch-black phantom and the raging flames entangled each other and suddenly rushed out. Chapter 242. One was black, the other was red. 2 streaks of light. One was demonic, the other violent. Takahashi Junyao and Takahashi Ryoichi played their respective characteristics to the extreme. Takahashi Ryoichi was like a flaming meteor that would never retreat, always driving at the extreme speed of him and his car. He even scraped his car on the guardrail more than once, creating a long string of sparks. Wu Pan Junyao, on the other hand, was like a venomous snake lurking in the grass, flicking his tongue and eyeing his prey covetously. As long as he was given the slightest chance, he would fiercely pounce forward and take a bite. Then, he would proudly swing his tail and throw the other party far away. One was as elegant as the wind, while the other was as fierce as fire. In just a little more than 7 minutes, the 2 great car kings had given everyone who was still here an extremely exciting race. When the 2 of them crossed the finish line almost at the same time, the audience had yet to recover from the intense battle that left them breathless. Unlike the previous race, the 2 car kings were supposed to be a training race to learn from each other, but it seemed to be filled with a strong smell of gunpowder that could not be melted. Almost every moment was filled with a dangerous atmosphere. In the eyes of others, the 2 car kings were always hanging by a thread. If it were not these 2 car kings, But anyone else who dared to go tit-for-tat like these two would have already flipped over and fallen off the cliff. When they saw the data displayed on the giant screen, there was only one word left in everyone's mind. As expected of the car king, strong. The average speed of the two was exactly the same, 146.45. Perhaps there would be a slight difference after the decimal point, but at least in this training race, the two were completely tied. What was more terrifying was that they were fighting from the beginning to the end, and they both broke the GTR record. As expected of the car king. At the finish line, the two Beast-class supercars, CTR and GTR, were parked side by side. Takahashi Ryoichi got out of the car, lit a cigarette, and took a deep breath. Many people say that you, the young car king, have regressed in the past few years, but I don't think so. Takahashi Junyao also stood next to the car and smiled charmingly. It's all right. The two looked up at the giant screen together. He broke his record. Takahashi Ryoichi pretended to be indifferent and complacent. He didn't need to say something for others to understand. He was the one who was best at controlling the GTR in the world. Wu Pan Junyao didn't say anything else. He vaguely understood that the person wearing the V Special Agent Team mask today was still not in the right state. What was the limit of that mysterious man? The more he thought about it, the more he felt the blood in his body heating up. He really wanted to see that guy seriously run. By the way, has anyone contacted Schroeder? Will that German guy come too? Ryoichi Takahashi suddenly said without thinking. Wu Pan Junyao shook his head. I don't know. Some time ago, I heard that the German took a group of friends to go rock climbing in the wild. God knows what kind of strange cliff he is hanging on. He won't be able to return to civilized society anytime soon. The German Schroeder's car was produced by Gumpert Apollosport, which used to be a professional modification factory and was now a niche manufacturer of sports cars. Whether it was the regular North Ring of the Nürburgring or the underground drag racing track, Schroeder was always the well-deserved hegemon. Since Schroeder became the king of the Nürburgring 7 years ago, he had never been defeated. Whether it was Wu Pan Junyao or other car kings, Schroeder did not choose to participate in the competition when they reached the peak. Perhaps it was unfortunate or fortunate. But even so, no one dared to question the ability of the king of Nürburgring, known as the Son of the Sun. His style was more violent than Ryoichi Takahashi's, but his control was as precise as a German-made machine. He was an impeccable man on the track. At this time, He Tianzhao, who had just woken up from a coma again, gritted his teeth and forced the nurse to hand the phone to him. He called a Chinese engineer from Schroeder's modification team. Others couldn't contact Schroeder at this time, but he could. He wanted to protect his beloved car, and he wanted to invite the Son of the Sun. On the other side, Chen Guang didn't care about what was going on outside. He was lying in bed and happily chatting with someone on the phone. It was Sun Xiaoxuan who called. Chen Guang was actually quite surprised to receive a call from the gentle and beautiful class monitor in the dead of night, but he felt an inexplicable warmth in his heart. He had only been out for 2 days, but the 2 nights of intense racing had quickly turned him from a college student to an underground racer who was about to dominate the competition. This change of mentality came so suddenly that he didn't have the slightest time and space to prepare himself mentally. Even though he was still joking with Lu Fei a second before entering his bedroom, the moment he closed the door, exhaustion quickly enveloped him. He was not tired from racing, but purely because, as a young man, he didn't know what to do with this sudden change of identity. Why did he always like to turn his mind to other places and force himself to be absent-minded during the race? It was because he didn't like racing at all. However, no matter how much he hated racing, Chen Guang had no choice. He didn't want to retreat. Even if it was only for the possibility of earning a huge sum of money, he could only grit his teeth and bear it. Suddenly seeing Sun Xiaoxuan's name on his phone, he was stunned for a moment before he remembered that in addition to being a racer, he was also a college student who skipped the final exams. Are you asleep? Sun Xiaoxuan's slightly trembling first sentence made Chen Guang, who was sitting by the window, tremble all over.
No.
You sound tired. Sun Xiaoxuan's voice trembled more and more. Separated by thousands of kilometers and 2 cell phones, he had only said 2 words, but she could actually hear the fatigue in his heart. Chen Guang grinned. What nonsense are you talking about? No, I'm so happy. When I come back, I'll treat you guys to a big meal. Treat the whole class. Treat the guests. 3 days. You went to earn money? What kind of job can make millions in a few days? Don't mess around. Sun Xiaoxuan said in a panic. Chen Guang was silent for a moment and finally couldn't help but say, Wait for me on Weibo. There's a topic that doesn't have a lot of attention called Hong Kong car gambling race. You can take a look. In fact, this topic has more attention than that. Maybe it's suppressed by Weibo. Thank God it didn't block it directly. You went underground to race. How could you? Sun Xiaoxuan exclaimed. Why can't I? I need money. Too much money. You know that. Okay, don't worry. I'm still waiting to treat you guys to a big meal. I'll be fine even if the sky falls down. By the way, the most popular photo in that topic is me in a black GTR. Wait a minute, let me check Weibo first. He didn't expect Sun Xiaoxuan to be so anxious and immediately went to check Weibo. Chen Guang was not in a hurry and kept waiting. Although long distance and roaming were very expensive, the roaming fee was nothing when he thought about the tens of thousands of yuan that Lu Li had to spend every month. 5 or 6 minutes later, her voice came again. Invincible God of War GTR?
Yes.
That's me. Awesome, right? Sun Xiaoxuan, on the other end of the phone, suddenly cried. Chen Guang was silent again. Sun Xiaoxuan's crying made him a little sad. He could hear that she wanted to help him so much. She absolutely didn't want him to race, but she couldn't do anything about this kind of thing. Even if he was called the Invincible God of War, even if he forced himself to look indifferent in front of her, he couldn't stop her heart from being pulled. He didn't know how long she cried, but she was finally able to speak while sobbing. Chen Guang, you must come back alive. After this incident, I'll never go racing again. I beg you. We are students. How can students race? Today we had a physics and chemistry exam. I did very well. Bai Fan and Xiong Jinka both failed. They'll be accompanying you for the makeup exam next semester. Wait, I'll send the revision courseware I made to your email. Remember to take a look at it when you're free. She said a lot of things on and off, and Chen Guang didn't even have a chance to interrupt. Achoo. She sneezed violently. You're hiding outside the dormitory and calling me, right? You're wearing too little. Hurry and go back. I'll go in now. Rest early. You can't make any mistakes in racing. Please don't. I like beep beep beep. Sun Xiaoxuan hung up. Chen Guang put down his phone and turned his head to look out the window to the west, a look of disappointment on his face. Great, he felt even more tired now. Forget it. I'll just give it my all this time. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on his bedroom door. The only person who would knock at this time was Lu Fei. What was she going to do? Chapter 243. If it was another time, Chen Guang wouldn't be thinking about what she was going to do, but what he could do with her right now. But right now, after he hung up the call with Sun Xiaoxuan, Chen Guang couldn't help but think about the little girl who was hiding on the balcony outside the dormitory thousands of miles away, quietly talking to him on the phone against the cold night wind. Sun Xiaoxuan's sneeze was like a knife stabbing into his heart, ruthlessly cutting open a crack in his heart defense. Chen Guang was surprised to find that what he wanted to do the most now was to turn on the computer and look at the physics and chemistry review material she sent. But since Lu Fei knocked on the door, he had to open the door. When he opened the door, he didn't know where she found a set of silk purple suspender pajamas and put it on. She put one hand on the door frame and stretched out the other hand. She stuck out her index finger and put it on Chen Guang's chin. Tell me, who are you talking to on the phone? It was at least 15 minutes. Stop fooling around. I was asking a classmate about the final exam. Chen Guang waved his hand to push Lu Fei's finger away and turned his head swiftly. Well, although he didn't want to admit it, Lu Fei was really a bit annoying. Especially when she deliberately posed like this, the purple color brought about a mysterious sense of charm. Under the slender suspenders, The neckline was also extremely open. There was no need for any special angle of light to easily see the cleavage of her cleavage. What was even more shameful was that this woman was clearly naked under the pajamas. The peaks of two mountains, well, I can't think anymore. If I think anymore, the grapes will be ripe. Chun Guang sat in front of the computer seriously and shook his head slightly. Humph. Which? You want to plot against me? You want to embarrass me? You want to make the old man look like a pervert and then play with the old man? You want to make the old man draw a map tonight? In your dreams. Chun Guang didn't believe that Lu Fei really wanted to seduce him into her bed. After interacting with this woman for 2 days, Chun Guang believed that he had a good understanding of her behavior. The more she acted like she was throwing herself at him, the more he couldn't fall for her trick. Otherwise, he would only be seen as a fool by her. Sure enough, Chun Guang's reaction left Lu Fei stunned for a brief moment. Shortly after, she chuckled as she stood behind Chun Guang. Chun Guang had actually opened his mailbox to download the courseware and started reading it. Lu Fei showed a deep smile on her face. This kid, indeed, was not easy to deal with. Just now, when Chun Guang was on the phone, she really put her ear to the door to hear something. Unfortunately, the sound insulation of the bedroom door in a 5-star hotel was too good. Even if her ears were about to be squashed, she could only vaguely hear some murmurs. For a moment, she also couldn't bear it. She was really curious about which little girl was fooled by this pervert. In order to further verify the idea that Chun Guang was a pervert, when he finished the phone call, Lu Fei immediately changed her equipment and planned to give him a little surprise. In the end, he actually didn't fall for it. This made Lu Fei feel frustrated and happy at the same time. Although he was indeed a poor loser, he was really different from ordinary poor teenagers. Was that your girlfriend just now? Lu Fei was behind Chun Guang. She put her hands on his shoulders and gently rubbed them. Damn it. She started to use the advanced attack. I won't fall for it. Absolutely won't fall for it. Physical and chemical absolute defense. Dispel. Chun Guang stared at the courseware that Sun Xiaoxuan carefully prepared for him. It was undeniable that this simple courseware with a pink background did condense a lot of Sun Xiaoxuan's efforts. She used her deep understanding of this subject to clearly explain the profound and simple terms in this courseware. Chun Guang only read the beginning and felt that the effect was better than listening to the teacher's lecture. He only snorted, "Not my girlfriend, I'm the class monitor. Alright, don't think about fooling me. I'll read for a while, and then go to sleep. Alright, if you really want to massage my shoulders, please use a little more force with your left hand. I've been using my left hand to change gears for the past 2 days. Most of the time, it's a bit difficult, unlike my right hand which already has muscle memory. My left hand is still a little tired and a little sore." Lu Fei's expression turned cold. She sighed in her heart. Sure enough, even God would get tired. She turned around and went out the door. She wrapped a coat over her pajamas and pulled a chair to sit behind Chun Guang. She actually started to massage Chun Guang's shoulders. Lu Fei didn't know how long she had been massaging until Chun Guang's had leaned against the chair in front of her. He actually fell asleep just like that. Lu Fei patted Chun Guang's back. Get up and sleep on the bed? Chun Guang opened his eyes in a daze. He turned around and started snoring on the bed. His brain was a mess. He had been racing earlier, and now his physical and chemical defense had accidentally turned into absolute hypnosis. His drowsiness was unstoppable. Lu Fei helped him turn off the computer. She looked at the light pink background of the PowerPoint courseware and smiled. She thought that the class monitor he was talking about must like him. As for himself, he might more or less have some feelings for the class monitor, but their relationship was definitely not at that level. Lu Fei roughly understood Chun Guang. Since he said they weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, it definitely wasn't at that level. Even if that was the case, what did it matter? What made me willing to be molested by him wasn't Chun Guang as a person, nor was it his identity as a student. It was just his incomparably domineering driving skills. I'll just take it as a souvenir for all those years of deviant love for racing. As the saying goes, good cars and beautiful women. If there was a good car, there would naturally be beautiful women. Together with the GTR, which was about to become a legend, he was able to form the second half of the beautiful car for the best racer in the world. His love for racing for so many years wasn't in vain. As for the result, that wasn't important. What future did she want? Could a woman marry a good driver? Was the future important? I'm not satisfied either. I'll let you go tonight, but wait until tomorrow. I don't believe you can still calm down in that environment, Lu Fei said through gritted teeth. But when Chen Guang's hand really got into the gap of her leather pants, she regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. Lu Fei covered her face and didn't dare to look at Chen Guang next to her. The music outside was deafening, and colorful lights shone into her eyes from time to time through the gaps between her fingers. The feeling of skin touching kept surging up from her buttocks and invading her scalp. Weren't you pretty tsundere last night? I just said it casually, and you really put your hand in. Chen Guang narrowed his eyes, but he looked out of the window with vigilance at all times, guarding against anyone coming over to peek. He was as nervous as a thief, and his heart was beating like a fully oiled engine. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. The old man never dreamed that her skin here would be so smooth and delicate. I must have taken the wrong medicine yesterday and missed the opportunity. My intestines are green with regret. Two people with green intestines were locked together in the narrow space of this legendary supercar. Their heavy breathing seemed to suppress the music outside. Chapter 244. When he saw his old friend from the first round again in the third round, Chen Guang was actually quite surprised. He didn't expect that the Mitsubishi Evio, which he thought was a weakling, would stumble through 2 rounds and make it into the third round. However, this guy's dream was destined to end here. First place, he. Also, the old man was already number 8. Organizing committee, do you have to be so straightforward? I protest. I'm a fan of Bei Shuai. I'm also in the last row. At least give me number 7. I should at least feel a little better. There were more people paying attention to Chen Guang today than yesterday. If it weren't for the 2 kings breaking the average speed record of 145.33 last night, the others would have thought that the matte GTR was completely invincible. What do you think he can do tonight? Yesterday, he killed He Tianzhao, and tonight, he's in the same group as Ayuan. This guy really has a deep affinity with our local racers. I can't say for sure, but there's no doubt that the other 7 cars won't let him have an easy time. He's already won twice in a row, and if he gets first place again, he'll be able to pick his car again. I'm afraid that no one would want their car to be locked. Therefore, from this round onwards, everyone is his enemy. I think it's hard to say whether or not he can create another miracle. There was a lot of discussion in the crowd, but not many people doubted the strength of the matte GTR anymore. Of course, the focus of everyone's doubts gradually shifted to whether or not he would be able to withstand the targeted suppression that would appear in the race from now on. If he could maintain a clean sweep of the first and second rounds until the third round, it meant that he had a chance to truly enter the stage of protecting his car. It didn't matter if it was the racers who had already been locked, or the racers who didn't want to be locked in this round. They were all united to prevent him from continuing to win. Apart from that, the organizing committee's very targeted ranking arrangement was also to prevent the winners of the first 2 rounds from continuing to win. In the past, almost 90% of the racers in the race fell in the third round. It was already very difficult to barely maintain the top 4 in this round. Last year's champion, Ayuan, had come in second place in the third round and lost the right to start the race. It was also because of the extremely unfair rules of the race that the status of every racer who had the last laugh rose sharply, becoming the undisputed king of cars. Moreover, there were only 10 racing kings in the entire world. Behind every great achievement of a Che Wang, there were stumbling blocks that fell under his wheels one after another. Apart from that, more and more people stood out and became the kings of their generation. These car kings would always appear in the major gambling arenas because of various invitations, or because they took the initiative to come out and become the final obstacle. That was why no new car king had been born in the past 3 years. At this moment, Chen Guang didn't think too much about it. He was just looking around in boredom. On his right was a car that looked like a commonly used WRC rally car. Judging from the logo, it was a Volkswagen. But obviously, this rally car wasn't as simple as it looked. Whether it was the suspension, the power, or even the tires, they were all tailored to the track of the Xiangjiang car racing competition. Even though it looked a bit like an ordinary family car with a sports cover, it was actually equipped with a terrifyingly powerful engine. Including the technical cost of the modification, the value of the whole car was at least 5 million yuan. The owner of this car was Wu Panjuniao's disciple in name. He was currently the most popular driver in Xiangjiang. Last year, he relied on this car to win the championship 3 times in the first 4 rounds and finally enjoyed the grand prize of 7 million yuan. But at this time, the former champion didn't have the confidence to win. On the contrary, he had a headache. Before the teams came out, he didn't expect that he would meet this GTR so soon. Originally, he hoped that the two of them would meet in the 4th round. What made Yuan even more distressed was that before he set off, he deliberately asked Wu Panjuniao about the shortcomings of the matte GTR drivers from the Thai Car King, who was both a teacher and a friend. Unexpectedly, Wu Panjuniao just raised his eyebrows. Although I don't think there's a racer who is truly perfect in all aspects in the world, I really haven't been able to find the shortcomings of this GTR so far. Don't ask me, just run according to your own habits. You're currently the strongest racer in Xiangjiang. You're also in the top 10 in Asia. Don't lose your momentum right from the start. In the end, Wu Panjuniao didn't say anything, and Yuan couldn't do anything about it. Forget it, I'll just grit my teeth and run. At least get the 2nd place first. Although the person next to him was good, wasn't his record yesterday surpassed by Wu Panjuniao and Takahashi Ryo? He shouldn't be unbeatable, right? Yuan curiously turned his head to look at the window on his left. He really wanted to know what that person was doing at this time. With the lights on both sides of the starting line, Yuan clearly saw the face hidden under the V Special Agent Team mask. At this time, that person was staring straight ahead, extremely focused. Yuan took a deep breath. What a terrifying momentum. As expected of the top racer that Mr. Wu Pan thought was flawless. Looks like the average speed of 145.33 yesterday was indeed not his limit. I hope that I can also run the most perfect race of my life in this pinnacle duel with him today. I've also used a lot of new technology on my car this year. Then, Yuan followed Chen Guang's gaze and looked forward as well. CK. This guy is looking at the racer girls. When he turned his head again, he was right. This guy was drooling at the corner of the V Special Agent Team's smiling face. Alright, the girl in front is quite pretty, but as a top racer, which racer doesn't lack women? Don't destroy your invincible image in my heart. Forget it, I'm also starting from the last row. I don't want to fail miserably at such an easy task. It took a lot of effort for Yuan to recover from the heavy blow that Chen Guang gave him, and he regained his focus. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, it was the last moment before the race. Yuan had already focused all his energy, staring straight ahead. His right foot kept tapping lightly on the accelerator, and his left hand held the handbrake tightly, ready to launch at any time. Hot blood slowly welled up from the bottom of his heart. Yuan had already made up his mind. Before entering the first turn, he had to overtake at least one car. I'm going to beat this guy on my left.
Bang.
The starting gun sounded. All 8 cars started to move. However, Yuan could clearly feel that the engine of the GTR on his left was a beat slower than him. This guy was distracted looking at the girl. Chapter 245. This was not Chen Guang's fault. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame the competition committee for their viciousness. Every time, the girls sent to give out benefits were prettier than the last. CK, they could also level up along with the competition. The old man couldn't help but fall in love with the long, straight black hair yesterday. Today, the short-haired girl was practically a movie star, alright? To others, it might be a common sight, but to an old virgin like the old man, it was a shameful stumbling block on his path to success. Fortunately, Master Guang remembered that getting rich was more important, so he stopped in time. Although he was slower than A Yuan by about 0.5 seconds, it was only a difference of half a car's length. With the previous round's opening double overtaking by Chen Guang and He Tianzhao as a reference, the lad in front of Chen Guang had learned his lesson. He stealthily pressed down on the outside line from the start, not giving Chen Guang any chance to overtake him. Chen Guang was already mentally prepared for this. He could only thank the heavens that you didn't intentionally step on the brakes to fight for the benefits of the racers in front of you. I have to thank you for your competitive spirit. On the other side, A Yuan had gotten a great bargain. The guy in front of Chen Guang had purposely moved a meter to the left in order to suppress Chen Guang's route. The guy in front of A Yuan had wanted to move to the right to suppress A Yuan's route. As a result, there was an entire car's length gap between the two of them. Chen Guang had seen this opportunity before A Yuan. Unfortunately, he had been distracted for half a second, and the gap of half a car's length had caused him to lose his chance. Instead, he could only watch as A Yuan happily sped up and pressed forward. He had gotten a great surprise for nothing. On the short 300-meter straight road before the first turn, A Yuan had completed his goal the moment he set off, and had even exceeded his expectations. As for Chen Guang's situation, it could be summed up in one sentence from Lu Fei. It's over. He's already lagging behind from the start. Those who could make it through 2 rounds of elimination and enter the 3rd round were not easy to deal with. Even the Mitsubishi Evo, which was originally a rookie, had been forcibly modified in the past 2 days. They added 2 superchargers and forcibly increased the maximum horsepower of the engine to close to 700. The Indian young man, Udall, was running more and more smoothly. He had the demeanor of a young knight temptress. His turns were smooth and graceful like the wind.
His boss was right.
Udall was indeed a genius that only appeared once every few decades. Unfortunately, he had met Chen Guang. If we don't think of something now, I'm afraid he won't be able to break out of the encirclement. Jia said worriedly beside Lu Fei. Other people would rather let A Yuan overtake them than let him overtake them easily. Lu Fei nodded. From the looks of it, there's nothing he can do on the straight road. I guess he can only count on the bend? Of course, Chen Guang himself had already realized where the problem lay. The feeling of being the enemy of the entire world was indeed unpleasant. But it didn't matter. This was just the beginning. If he's only at this level, it seems like we shouldn't have come here. It was unknown when Takahashi Ryoichi and Wu Panjunyao were standing together again. Takahashi Ryoichi was raising his chin arrogantly and looking coldly at the GTR that had fallen to the back. Wu Panjunyao was quite talkative today. He shook his head.
Don't worry.
At that Z turn, he will definitely make a move. That place is his absolute domain. There was some disdain on Takahashi Ryoichi's face, but he didn't say anything. Just as Wu Panjunyao said, the performance of the pitch-black GTR at the first perverse Z-turn was indeed terrifying. Putting aside the skills he had shown in other stages, just by looking at that Z-turn, he was invincible. Among the people present, there were no experts at the level of Wu Panjunyao and Takahashi Ryoichi, but there were a lot of critics who were good at watching others race. On the commentary platform, Mr. X directly pointed out this matter in the broadcast. If this car intends to continue to create miracles in this race, then he must start overtaking at Z-turn at the latest. Everyone was waiting for him to reproduce his Z-turn stunt. However, this time, Chen Guang was the first to choose not to play by the rules. He made a move ahead of time, the 7 consecutive turns before the Z-turn. When others slowed down a little, intending to make a stable turn, he suddenly accelerated and pulled directly to the outside line. Before the Porsche 911 in 7th place could react, Chen Guang had already rushed past the guardrail on his outside line. He overtook at the first turn of the 7 consecutive turns.
Idiot.
Stupid. He Tianzhao, who had forcibly rushed out of the hospital today despite the doctor's obstruction, and asked someone to send him here, waved his hand fiercely. He was furious. Then his neck twisted again. Because of Uncle Cheng, He Tianzhao did not dare to try to use any dirty tricks on Chen Guang or Lu Fei, but he had secretly contacted some local driver friends, wanting them to secretly suppress Chen Guang in the race. For example, the driver of the Porsche 911 was a friend of He Tianzhao's, but unfortunately, he was not very impressive. The distance between the 7 cars had never been pulled apart. After Chen Guang overtook the first opponent, he had to face the next turn of the 7 consecutive turns without stopping, and his next prey. This time, the guy in front had learned his lesson. Although he had to slow down when entering the turn, he quietly pulled the car towards the outside line, not leaving any chance for Chen Guang to overtake him on the outside line. However, this time, Chen Guang rushed fiercely towards his inside line again. There was no drift. He was running with his hands on the ground. This was not logical. Even with the strongest vehicle stability system, it was impossible to hold on to the steering wheel at such a high speed. What the hell happened? The data analysis on the giant screen and the slow-motion replay once again solved the mystery of Chen Guang, but it only made people gasp. At the beginning of the design, the first generation of the GTR 32 could not drift at all. This car could be regarded as one of the modern ancestors of the running with the hands on the ground. The R32 used an extremely advanced body stability system at the time, and the choice of suspension and tires was also the most fundamental goal of firmly grasping the ground. At the beginning of the design, this car was only designed to achieve extremely high speed through stable high-speed propulsion. Coupled with the classic engine, the first generation of the GTR was almost invincible on the track. But later, especially in recent years, with the advancement of technology, modifications became more and more popular. After the GTR series was skillfully trained, it could be regarded as a drifting car suitable for mountain road racing. Chen Guang's car modification ideas were the result of Wang Qing's painstaking work, and after Jie's careful training and meticulous configuration, it was even more outstanding. However, the classic body stability system and four-wheel drive system on the GTR series were not completely removed. Most of the time, they were turned off for more stable drifting. But just now, when it was clear that it was impossible to overtake the car from the outside line, Chen Guang had switched the drive mode 3 times in a short period of time. Front drive, rear drive, and finally, the four-wheel drive that stabilized the car. The front drive forcibly pulled the front of the car into the inside line. The rear drive briefly adjusted the car body. After the four-wheel drive stabilized the car body, it grabbed the ground and turned the corner. The matte GTR turned into a silent bolt of lightning, fast and terrifying. This was a victory for Chen Guang's precise operation, and at the same time, it was also Wang Qing's great achievement in the field of car modification, and it was also a result of Jie's golden wrench. Chen Guang had perfect control of the time lag when switching between drive modes. Instead, he had turned this lag into his own driving force. For ordinary people, this kind of rapid mode switching was no different from courting death. Machines were not gods. The four-wheel drive and front drive system that had been switched in a hurry couldn't perfectly control the car that was crazily charging through corners under the control of a computer program. However, even the short drift when the car lost control was also under Chen Guang's control. With Chen Guang's continuous micro-adjustments by tapping on the brakes with the tip of his foot, everything was under control. The so-called loss of control had instead made up for the last bit of turning range that he had deliberately left behind. That was why his cornering looked so strange and smooth. But if the camera was slowed down 100 times, it would be discovered that he was actually drifting intermittently every second. Chapter 246. After exiting the corner, Chen Guang pounced on the car in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Lunatic, this terrifying lunatic is here again.
Who could stop him?
The racer in front was also at a loss. The GTR behind him was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey, but he really didn't know what to do. Should he cut to the outside to defend against his strange drifting without slowing down, or cut to the inside to defend against his even stranger running style? Also, aren't you tired after overtaking 2 cars in a row? Aren't you nervous? Aren't you afraid that one mistake will cause your death? It was a pity that Chen Guang couldn't answer him. Otherwise, with Chun Guang's warm heart, he would definitely be more than happy to answer his questions. No, I'm not nervous. I'm really not nervous. I can't make a mistake. I've already made all the mistakes I could in the Racing God training ground, and I've died many times. In the end, this hesitant guy chose to enter the corner at 110 kilometers per hour, taking the center line. Then, Chun Guang decisively took the corner at 130 kilometers per hour from the outside, teaching him how to be a grown-up. The result of taking the center line was, of course, that he couldn't take either side. Now, the person in front of Chun Guang was A Yuan, who had finally overtaken another car to take fourth place. A Yuan was feeling unwell. He'd had such a smooth start, and he'd finally taken fourth place with only a fifth of the race left. He'd thought that his journey would be a sea of stars. How did that guy mysteriously catch up from behind? How did he do it? His speed when exiting the corner was clearly at least 20 kilometers per hour faster than him. He didn't need to accelerate too much to close the distance between them. How could he always take the corners at 130 kilometers per hour? That's a lot less time than us. That's bullying. Did the three people behind me grow up eating sh*t? Can you guys be any worse? A Yuan cursed the others into sh*t, but he himself wasn't any better. He barely managed to take one more corner than the three people who had been overtaken. At the fifth of the 7 consecutive corners, he obediently gave up. The 6th corner, another car overtook. The 7th corner, another car overtook them. The last brother managed to maintain his position as the leader all the way to the Z-turn, but he was decisively killed by Chun Guang, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. When he returned to first place once again, all the parking lots on the huge mountain racetrack were silent. Many people speculated that this round of the competition would be the greatest test for this GTR. It might struggle under the concerted efforts of others to intercept it. They might not be able to push him out of the top 4, but they could at least make him lose the championship. What was the result? This guy had only used less than a third of the track to overtake 7 cars in a row and take back the first place. This wasn't racing, it was an adult bullying a child. In the short 1.5 minutes of Chun Guang's crazy overtaking, Mr. X's mouth had not stopped talking from the beginning to the end. He had completely turned into a machine gun, but he still could not quite keep up with Chun Guang's overtaking speed. Seeing that he had finally taken back the first place, Mr. X heaved a sigh of relief. I can finally rest for a while. Now I'm afraid there's only one suspense left, right? Can he still break his own record from yesterday? Can he be higher than the record set by Mr. Wu Pan and Mr. Takahashi last night? The suspense of this question did not even last more than a minute. When Chun Guang had run past the halfway mark, the number displayed on the timer told everyone a ruthless truth. Yesterday's record was not a record at all. Unless he crashed or flew out in the second half of the track, otherwise it would be broken without a doubt. When Chun Guang really finished running at an average speed of 151 kilometers per hour and once again disappeared into the night sky, everyone's jaws dropped and they were speechless. He broke through 150 kilometers per hour. Did he mean that he did not go all out for the past 2 days? Was he just playing? Mr. X was a little weak. He was almost shouting himself hoarse today. In the end, he realized that most of his strength was used in the wrong place. I gave you my voice for overtaking 7 cars in a row, and you turn around and tell me that you're going to break 150 kilometers per hour today. What a scam. He had commentated hundreds of official racing competitions and more than 10 underground racing competitions, but he had never shouted himself hoarse. He only felt extremely awkward. Wu Pan Junyao and Takahashi Ryo didn't look too good either. After yesterday's competition, the two of them had thought that although the matte GTR was also very powerful, it was at most an opponent of the same level. In fact, although the competition between the two of them last night looked particularly intense, it did not seriously affect their respective absolute speeds. On the contrary, with a well-matched competitor, it actually helped each other, and everyone performed well. After running at an average speed of 146.45 kilometers per hour last night, although the two of them looked calm and collected, they were secretly feeling good. If they were to really run again without any interference, they might not be much faster than this standard. It was impossible for them to break the natural barrier of 150 kilometers per hour so easily. After Yuan and the other racers who were in the same group arrived one after another, they stared at the giant screen in a daze, unable to speak for a long time. The other 8 racers who hadn't started their second race didn't even have the courage to race anymore. Many years ago, people had fantasized about whether someone could break the unsurpassable record of 140 kilometers per hour on the mid-mountain racetrack. Yesterday, 140 kilometers per hour had been broken. It was a historic moment. It announced the arrival of a new era on the mid-mountain racetrack, and even the global underground racing world. Some people attributed this great progress to the improvement of the racer's skills, but more people attributed the credit to the technological innovation of the cars. Many people even secretly speculated that the next threshold of 150 kilometers per hour might be like this times 140 kilometers per hour, and that it would take a few years to break. But in the end, it had only been a day. The car was still the same car, but the record had been broken by a whole new era. What was this? Was it a slap in the face? Did this mean that this person's driving skills had surpassed the bottleneck of science and technology? Jia was laughing so hard that he looked like an idiot. He just chuckled, then looked back at Lu Fei and kept chuckling. Lu Fei was embarrassed by his gaze and kicked him. "What are you doing?" Jia chuckled again and pointed at his face. "Sister Lu Fei, my car and brother Racing God's car have passed 150 kilometers per hour. I'm going to leave my name in history. I'm so happy." Lu Fei chuckled. In fact, she was quite surprised, but after interacting with Chen Guang more, she gradually adapted to Chen Guang's invincible state in the car. After thinking about it, she decided to give Jia an even bigger surprise. "Do you know about Wang Qing's GTR in Wujing?" Lu Fei asked. Jia came back to his senses and waved his hand disdainfully. "I know. I think it was made by a small team in Wujing. It's not on the same level as my car." "Then let me tell you something. He used that car to run an average speed of 150 kilometers per hour on the Fengquan mountain racetrack. That was probably his first day on the Fengquan mountain racetrack. Strictly speaking, it was his first day in contact with a super sports car," Lu Fei said with a smile. Jia's mouth opened wider and wider. He had been to Wujing City and had run the Fengquan mountain racetrack with Wang Qing. Of course, he knew that the difficulty of that track was not inferior to the Banshan racetrack at all. Perhaps it was even more difficult. "You're saying that he used that 650 horsepower weak chicken to run 150 kilometers per hour on the first day?" Jia asked in disbelief. Lu Fei nodded. "That's right, that's it." Suddenly encountering the right steering wheel affected him. Until today, he probably hasn't fully adapted to it. Last night, he told me that his left shoulder was quite sore. Looking at Jia's scared, silly look, Lu Fei felt an indescribable sourness in her heart. The feeling of borrowing Chen Guang's prestige to brag in front of a country bumpkin like Jia was pretty good. Lu Fei looked up again and saw the Lamborghini Aventador that had fallen into the last 4 places. She felt even more comfortable. Today was still a fruitful day. Chapter 247. Lu Fei really wanted to see the look on Chen Guang's face when he found out that he actually finished 151. Maybe he would be a little happy, and then he would pat himself on the shoulder and compliment him. "First of all, I have to thank you, an excellent, beautiful agent, for my achievements today." Lu Fei stood in the crowd and watched the second group of racers slowly enter the queue. These people almost lost the courage to race. Lu Fei was even more proud. She was so fantasizing that the corners of her mouth were about to blossom. "That's right, the reason why he can run so smoothly is because I've put in so much effort to be at his beck and call for him. I've also contributed a lot to this. Being able to make history with him, it was worth it to throw away all the work in the company and come here with him." Speaking of which, there was probably a lot of backlog of documents waiting to be dealt with in the past 3 days. I'll go through them tomorrow. If there was really something important, the vice president would always call me. Lu Fei happily waited for Chen Guang's call. She was ready to tell him the new record he had created in an exaggerated tone. She had practiced it at least 10 times in her mind. In the end, he waited for nearly an hour before Chen Guang's call finally came.
What?
You're already back at the hotel? Lu Fei was so angry that she almost smashed her phone. This guy is getting more and more outrageous. After he met up with the SUV that was waiting for him, he directly threw the GTR to the people arranged by Uncle Cheng. He directly drove the SUV back to the hotel. What this guy meant was that he was completely letting others do the work. I'm a person who is worth hundreds of thousands of yuan per minute. I accompanied you from thousands of miles away just to race with you. I wanted to leave my name in the history books with you. In the end, you left a delicate beauty like me to stay on the mountain track to help you pick out the car. You went back to the hotel by yourself. This is outrageous. When Chen Guang heard that Lu Fei was actually angry, he quickly laughed. Aya, it's not my fault. You know that I'm a student. My studies are the most important. Physics and chemistry is really hard to learn. If I don't seize the time to make up for it, I'll have to kneel on the ground during the makeup exam. Let me tell you, the failure rate of this course is as high as 40%. The retake rate is also as high as 20%. It's practically hell mode for us science students. Hearing him speak so seriously, Lu Fei really couldn't continue to criticize him. However, she was a little speechless. She said angrily, "You're the racing god of this generation. Can't you be a little more promising? It was nothing more than failing a course. What are you afraid of?" Chen Guang panicked and said, "Please don't say that. You don't know that I failed 3 subjects in my freshman year. When I went home, I was almost beaten to death. My parents' mixed doubles was so scary that I couldn't bear to look back on it. Oh, my mother was also in good health at that time." Just like that, Lu Fei hung up the phone gloomily. The god of racing was actually a college student who was afraid of failing a course. This setting was simply ridiculous. Unfortunately, I couldn't refute him. Thinking about it carefully, Lu Fei was a little envious of Chen Guang. She envied that he could be beaten and scolded by his parents. No, why am I thinking about these useless things? Back to this scammer. He felt that the root of his problem was that he didn't pay enough attention to the car racing competition. Otherwise, how could the exam be more attractive than coming here to beat up the local tycoons and divide their wealth? He loves money so much. Let me think about it and go back to give him a big surprise.
What?
How much did you say I've earned so far? Can you say it again? Did I hear you correctly? Chen Guang's mouth was wide open. He looked at Lu Fei, who was asking for praise in front of him. He couldn't say a word for a long time. Just now, Lu Fei suddenly rushed into the bedroom with a loudspeaker in her hand. She loudly shouted beside his head, "Let me tell you a piece of good news. The Lamborghini that you locked today is a limited edition. It's worth 10 million. Including the prize money, you've earned a total of 28,500,000 yuan. Ha ha ha. Are you happy? When you were seriously reading, I helped you earn so much money. How are you going to thank me?" Then, Lu Fei turned her head and saw the window that Chen Guang didn't have time to minimize. That's right, it was the Dota 2 game interface. Well, he was actually just tired from reading the courseware just now. His hands were itchy, so he opened the app to watch the battle and get some refreshment. Then, he accidentally clicked on matchmaking, and even more so, he successfully queued in an instant. Then, he accidentally chose a sword saint, and in the end, he accidentally dealt 80 blows in 10 minutes. Oh, and his current kill count was 8/0/0. 8 kills, no assists. Pure natural human-headed dog, no additives. You bastard. You keep saying that you're reading, but you actually play games behind my back. And it's Dota. Our friendship has come to an end. From now on, we're no longer friends. Your 28,500,000 yuan will be my compensation for my mental damage.
Goodbye.
Lu Fei pretended to be furious and turned to walk out. Instantly, Chen Guang bounced up from his seat and roared, "Holy shit! 28,500,000 yuan. Lu Fei, wait.
Wait.
Chen Guang rushed forward and grabbed her shoulder. Lu Fei didn't even turn her head and waved her hand domineeringly. Don't call my name. Since the beginning of chaos, Luo Go and Knife Pig have been irreconcilable enemies. The next time we meet, you and I will be enemies. Our eyes will burn with hatred. Take care of yourself. After spending about half an hour, Chen Guang calmed down the traumatized Lu Fei and signed a series of humiliating treaties, finally obtaining Lu Fei's forgiveness. Among them were things like LOL was 10 times more fun than Dota 2, LOL's character design was cuter, Dota 2's style was dark, and he would play a round of LOL with her tomorrow. Speaking of which, how did it suddenly become more than 28 million out of the blue? Didn't I only play 3 matches? After signing, Chen Guang finally had the chance to talk business with Lu Fei. Lu Fei laughed. The third round's prize is 2 million. Your prize is a total of 4. 5 million. It's 4. 5,100,000 yuan, thank you. CK off. The first day's Aston Martin. The price of a car that landed in China is around 3 million. The rich guy who has become your hardcore fan is also willing to spend money and invested a few million into the modifications. In the end, it runs like a pile of *T. I estimate this car to be worth around 5 million. The second car, well, normally, He Tianzhao would not fall to the bottom 4 in the second round. He gave you a big gift. Now that his Viper is no longer on sale in China, it is very valuable as a collector's item. It's worth around 4 to 5 million. He invested more than 5 million in his modifications, so the car is worth 9 million. Today, I'm dying of laughter. There is actually someone who can drive a Lamborghini LP 750 in the curve races, and he actually made it to the third round. And it's a limited edition. You have to thank him when you have the chance in the future. This car is worth 10 million. CK. Let the old man drink some water to calm down. Over the past few days, Chen Guang had been running around with his head down. He had even left the selection of vehicles to Lu Fei. In any case, he only allowed her to pick the expensive ones. As for the specific car, he only asked for a rough estimate. Today, after a rough calculation, he realized that he could not stay calm anymore. He counted with his fingers and gulped down a mouthful of water. He turned and stared at Lu Fei. You mean I only ran for 3 days and I became a standard multimillionaire? Lu Fei nodded. That's right. Ha. I'm dying of laughter. I remember some time ago when I told my dad that I earned 2 million. At that time, his eyes rolled back and he fainted from shock. Look, I'm so calm. In the face of 28,500,100 yuan, my expression did not change at all. Ha. Chen Guang, what's wrong with you? Chen Guang, wake up. Old Master Guang collapsed on his back without a word. In 3 days, he went from being penniless, with his family in debt, his mother seriously ill, and a tragic, bankrupt second-generation rich man with a deficit of millions of yuan. He turned into a tycoon with nearly 30 million in assets. Old Master Guang could not stay calm at all. He would not have known if he had not calculated, but once he did, he was shocked. Fainting straight away was a form of self-protection for humans in the face of intense stimulation. Chen Guang's self-protection was very good. Chapter 248. After a long time, Chen Guang woke up, but he still couldn't calm down. Tell me, how am I going to spend so much money? Can I spend it all in my lifetime? Lu Fei only laughed. Of course you can. It won't even be enough to buy a Bugatti Veyron. Buffed, I'm not a country bumpkin like you. I can split a penny into 2 and spend it. Who would buy that kind of thing to squander money? I've been messing around with Arena recently, and I haven't been willing to spend money on a big maintenance. I'll spend 2,000 on a comprehensive maintenance. With Lu Fei's interruption, the game completely collapsed. He couldn't even continue reading. After Lu Fei left, Chen Guang lay on the bed, tossing and turning, his mind full of thoughts. He used to be so eager to become a rich man, but one day, when a huge amount of wealth fell from the sky, he realized that all the psychological preparations he had made before were useless. His mind was filled with the terrifying figure of 5 million yuan. Apart from that, he could imagine that there was an even more terrifying amount of wealth waiting for him. There were still 4 days until the competition. By the time he got all 7 cars, Chen Guang couldn't imagine how terrifying his total wealth would be. Sigh, the old man is still inexperienced after all. Look at how calm Lu Fei is. She doesn't even bat an eyelid when faced with a matter of tens of millions. I still have a long way to go, and I still have a lot of experience to learn. However, the foundation of all of this is built on the foundation of continuous winning. No matter what, I can't fail. He gritted his teeth and got out of bed. He turned on the computer again, but this time, it wasn't to play games or read the courseware. Well, as a multimillionaire, shouldn't he first learn about politics and how to do business? An hour later, he decisively fell back on the bed and fell asleep. Before he fell asleep, he told himself that business was not something that could be learned just by surfing the internet. The next morning, it was already past 10 in the morning when he woke up. It was rare for her to sleep in. She tossed and turned until 2 o'clock in the morning before falling asleep. When he walked out of the bedroom, he saw Lu Fei taking out her laptop and fiddling with something on the screen. She crossed her legs, put her left hand to the side, and fiddled with the mouse with her right hand. Her expression was exceptionally focused as she dragged the mouse and tapped it from time to time. Chen Guang quietly moved closer and took a look. It was actually a document from Lu Fei Company. Holy shit! An opportunity! It was time to learn how billionaires did business. He didn't interrupt her and even forgot to remind her that her family's trade secrets had been leaked. Chen Guang silently stood behind her and looked at the documents displayed on the laptop. This seemed to be the office management system of her company. The contents of these documents were generally things reported by various departments. Lu Fei browsed through the documents very quickly. One by one, she quickly flipped through the documents on the screen. Then, she ticked off the approve or disapprove button below. There were also some reports. After Lu Fei read them line by line, she dragged them to another folder. This folder's title was also very simple: Read. Just like that, Chen Guang spent 2 hours looking at it. Finally, Lu Fei stretched and said to herself, "I've only been gone for 3 days and you've already left me with so many things. I'm exhausted. What use do I have you guys?"
Ah.
Then, she turned around and saw Chen Guang. She exclaimed, "What are you doing? You're so sneaky. You're scaring me to death." Chen Guang chuckled. "I accidentally saw your company's trade secrets."
Don't kill me.
Lu Fei spat. "How is this confidential? It's just some regular documents. How long have you been reading them?" Chen Guang put up 2 fingers. 2 hours. Then his stomach growled. He hadn't had breakfast since he woke up in the morning. Lu Fei glared at him angrily again.
What?
"You want to learn how to do business so quickly? All right. Let's talk while we eat." Chen Guang decisively took on the job of receiving lunch from the waiter. He eagerly filled the table with all kinds of food. Then, he even more enthusiastically picked up a piece of cabbage and put it in Lu Fei's bowl. "You used your brain too much just now. Nourish yourself. Nourish yourself. Damn. You're too purposeful." Lu Fei was defeated by his eagerness. Chen Guang scratched his head awkwardly. "I'm just anxious. I'm going to be rich soon, but I'm still completely clueless about doing business. I can't just deposit money in the bank and earn interest, can I? I have to at least understand a little bit about how to use this money." "I'm impressed. Let me put it this way. According to my current estimation, if you really win all 7 rounds, you will probably get a total of about 80 million yuan in the end. However, the best way to use these cars is to auction them on the spot. Then, you can hand them over to Uncle Chung to help you deal with them. The final amount of money you can get is around 70 million. Chen Guang nodded. He completely understood what Lu Fei said. "That's right. It's 70 million. How do I spend it?" I have no idea. 70 million is just a drop in the bucket. If you don't pretend, we can still be friends. Don't pretend. I have it. Can we get down to business? I saw you handling the documents just now. You really want to learn how to manage a business. I was really caught off guard when you suddenly got so much money. I saw you handling the documents just now. You're really decisive in handling the documents. I think there's a document about a subsidiary company applying for 50 million for technological transformation, right? How did you approve it in a blink of an eye? There's another document about purchasing some foreign equipment. The price is not cheap either. I think it's more than 70 million. You approved it too. Also, there's a job transfer, a project to develop a new product, and a derivative product. You handled all of these in a blink of an eye. That's too fast. How can you think of so many things in your head? Don't you feel dizzy? Why didn't I notice that you're so smart? Lu Fei. All right, I'll stop joking. I really admire you in this aspect. I think you're really good. Can you teach me? Chen Guang had always been a person who loved to learn. Lu Fei knocked his head with her chopsticks. If you learn from me, you'll lose everything in minutes. What do you mean? Am I that weak? Chapter 249. It's not that you're so weak, it's that you can't afford to play like me. Do you know, although I decided to come to Xiangjiang with you in a hurry, I have already delegated part of the authority before I left. The documents that are submitted to me are all decisions that can only be made by the highest level of the company. Before these documents were sent to me, do you know how many people have already gone through them? A company is a huge structure. The so-called brain is not just me, not to mention that I am only in charge of the subsidiary companies of the company. You see me making a simple decision whether to approve or not. In fact, before this, many people have been racking their brains for the same thing. For example, the 50 million investment in technical transformation is a necessary requirement for the country to promote environmental protection in the new 2 years. Our previous production wastewater treatment level can't meet the new standards, and the need for technical transformation has reached an urgent level. It must be implemented as soon as possible, otherwise, we will have to stop production for rectification. We have already done a long negotiation in the early stage, and the small and medium tests of the Scientific Research Unit have also passed the acceptance inspection, proving that this set of process plan is feasible, so of course, I directly approved it. Also, the 70 million purchase is because a new technology has just appeared abroad, which can greatly increase the output and quality of our products. If it is done well, it will increase the annual profit by hundreds of millions, so of course, I directly approved it. Lu Fei talked until the dishes on the table were completely cold. Chen Guang listened with a face full of admiration. He really didn't expect that this seemingly retarded big sister, okay, she is really his retarded fan, actually has so many things in her head. Although every decision had gone through layers of scrutiny before it reached her, as the so-called highest authority, she also knew the key links involved in every decision like the back of her hand. The most amazing thing is that she is very clear about the possible impact of every decision. Damn, doing business is so difficult. I'd better just take the interest. This was the conclusion that Chen Guang came to. Lu Fei knocked his head again. You're giving up just like that? Let me put it this way. You look like I know everything, but in fact, if you want to carry out the specific details, I don't know anything. For example, this product called Enchanting is the flagship product of one of my subsidiary companies, but in fact, I don't know how this thing is produced and how many links there are in the production process. I don't want to understand it either. Even if I occasionally ask and temporarily understand, I won't study it in detail. It's impossible for me to understand every detail like the production manager of this branch company. As a decision maker, it is very difficult to manage such a huge company. A person's energy is limited, so I can only let myself be in a situation where I know but don't know. I only need to control the situation that I should control. As for the rest, I will let others deal with it. If someone else messes up, I'll hold him accountable. If he can't bear the responsibility, I'll replace him with someone else and find someone who can bear the responsibility. It's as simple as that. So doing business is really difficult, but it is also very simple. It is nothing more than to constantly make decisions. It is the same for people. Chen Guang was puzzled again. Then how do you know that your decisions will always be right? Of course, I can't always be right, but I can guarantee that there will always be more right decisions than wrong ones. Other than that, I still have a big company, right? If I make a mistake, there will always be a sober person who can remind me. If most of the decisions approved by the company's leaders are wrong, then I can only blame it on my bad luck. If there is a mistake, everyone will bear it together. But my family business is big, and a small mistake will not be enough. Because what I control is only a small part of a huge company. If this part is broken, I can still pull resources from other places to fix it. You can't do it. 70 million will be gone in a minute. Chen Guang vaguely understood what Lu Fei said. Actually, in my opinion, people who do business can be roughly divided into 3 types. The first is the kind of people like our parents, who rely purely on the accumulation of life experience to build a team step by step, and then use this team as the foundation to expand their business. These people, I would sum them up as experiential businessmen. The other type is like Tang Xiaokai, who relies on their extraordinary brains and courage to rush into the financial market. They have a wealth of theoretical knowledge, and even more so, they have the wisdom to work together. I call these types of people technical businessmen. Then which type are you? Chen Guang asked. Lu Fei laughed. I am the third type. Intuitive. After thinking about it, I think I'll just be the intuitive type.
Puffed.
Do you think my intuition comes so easily? I'm different from Zhong Bai and the others. I've been involved in business affairs since I was 16 years old in high school. Over the years, I've seen all kinds of people and encountered all kinds of things. Whether it's business negotiations, technical difficulties of the company, or even the coming and going of some old officials, I've seen a lot of them. Although I am only 25 years old, strictly speaking, I have been learning business for 9 years. That is why I dare to say that I am the intuitive type. Since last year, my family divided a branch company and let me be the head. Amazing! Chen Guang's face was full of admiration. But from last year to this year, my branch company has lost more than 500 million.
Puffed.
Chen Guang really wanted to strangle her. Damn, this woman's words are reasonable. But in the end, I still suffer losses. I feel like I am learning oil painting from a blind person and music from a deaf person. Well, although he was cursing Lu Fei in his heart, Chen Guang had to admit that what she said was reasonable. The knowledge of doing business was indeed like this. The human brain was not a computer, and business was a social knowledge. It was impossible to simply rely on some so-called mathematical formulas or economic principles to understand the mysteries of doing business. Otherwise, the richest people in the world would not be businessmen, but those mathematicians or economists who did research. Previously, he tried to learn business by reading books or reading biographies of rich people, but it was a bit stupid. An experienced businessman's idea of success, to put it bluntly, is the accumulation of life experience. When faced with one decision after another, always be able to make the more correct decision. This is easy to say, but difficult to do. As for a technical businessman like Tang Xiaokai, it is even more difficult than an experienced businessman. A technical businessman can be said to be the sublimation of an experienced businessman. On the basis of the experience brought by losses and setbacks, he also has the same rich theoretical knowledge. He can penetrate the surface to understand the essence of the market economy, which allows him to be like a fish in water in the US stock market and investment market. But to copy Tang Xiaokai's successful experience to China? Haha, he can teach him how to be an adult in a minute. For a so-called intuitive type like Lu Fei, it is even more profound. On the surface, she is cheating her father by losing 500 million a year. But in other words, to be able to maintain such a large company and only lose 500 million a year, she has actually exceeded the requirements of her family. She has the theoretical knowledge that young people are passionate about, and she also has the experience that an experienced businessman needs. In the future, she will follow the path that her family arranged for her and walk on the throne of a strong woman in the business world. This is not difficult for her, because from the beginning to the end, there will be a team to assist her, And as she goes further, the team that assists her will become stronger and stronger, and the level will become higher and higher. This is an advantage that a rich second generation like her is born with, and it is not something that can be envied. But when Chen Guang put the same thinking in place of himself, it does not work at all. He is rich, but not rich enough, and he is not a real rich second generation. The most successful experience of his family in business is his father's hot pot restaurant, and that is all. Of course, after today's conversation, Chen Guang did not end up with nothing. At least, compared to many people, he has a too perfect and too easy start. 70 million in cash. That is something that many people can't even dream of in a few lifetimes. Instead of being fearful before he even made a move, he might as well try the thought process of an experiential businessman, like what Lu Fei said. He would first find an opportunity for himself and create a platform where he could continuously make decisions. That way, he would be able to accumulate the experience he needed. In addition, perhaps he needs a team? The comprehensive wisdom of a team is always stronger than the thinking of an individual. Of course, a truly successful person, such as little brother Ma or brother Yun, their team is strong, but their individual decision-making ability is even more outstanding. A person with perfect decision-making ability and a similarly comprehensive team can truly become the person who drives the tide of the economy. Well, the old man has no chance in the short term, so I will take the interest first. How about I take out 100,000 yuan to open a lottery shop? Look, the opportunity to make a decision is coming. Should I open the lottery shop in the pedestrian street of the school, or in Winqing town outside the school? Should I sell sports lottery or welfare lottery? After giving himself a hard slap, Chen Guang felt like a fool. Forget it. Let's use the other method that Lu Fei mentioned at the end. What I need the most is an idiotic way to make money. Put the money in the venture capital market, and then spread the net like a fool. Find a suitable company to invest in the venture capital market, split the 70 million into several or dozens of portions, and put them into different egg baskets. If one side fails, the other side can always make up for the loss. When I can't make up my mind when I invest, I can ask Lu Fei or Tang Xiaokai, these smart people who are more experienced than me. I can at least give them face, right? Because we're friends? Then, as long as the general direction of the investment keeps up with the trend, and let my money climb up along with the entire market, unless I am so unlucky that I can't even drink water and get wiped out, I can still make the appreciation of my assets outpace the bank interest. That is enough. Chen Guang looked at the heavenly holy grail in his hand regretfully again. Liuli has not done anything for a long time. How I wish I could let this godly artifact give me a shot that can turn me into a business superman in a second. Chapter 250. Unfortunately, it was different from physical training, and it was also different from simple language studies or games. What business required was a person's comprehensive thinking ability. Apart from that, there was also the ability to be extremely calm when faced with decisions. At the same time, there was also the ability to lead a team. Doing business required a person's state of mind to be improved in all aspects. Seeing that Ling Tian couldn't handle such a profound subject like business, only God knew when he would be able to upgrade this unlucky godly weapon to the 3rd level, Cloud Elephant Sky. Chen Guang maintained his disdain for this heavenly holy grail, but he completely forgot that the truly awesome people, such as the founder who must die, Mark Zuckerberg, had already founded this social network that was worth hundreds of billions of dollars at the same age as him. Humph. Trash. What's the use of you? Chen Guang tossed the heavenly holy grail into the sky and caught it. Being free of desires, that was how confident he was. He would kneel and beg Liuli for mercy when he needed her help. Isn't it just money? Is there a need for you to be so vexed? You don't have to worry about this. This Empress has covered it for you. If you throw another cup and affect this Empress gaming, I'll kill you. At this moment, Liuli's voice suddenly rang out in Chen Guang's heart. She finally appeared again. You have covered it for me? What do you mean? Gaming? What game is she playing? Why do I have a bad feeling about this? Chen Guang held the cup with both hands and shouted in his heart. What do you mean? Come out and have a chat. Nothing much. This empress has been surfing the internet every day, and my understanding of your world has increased by leaps and bounds. Your internet is really interesting. I can direct the world without stepping out of my house. Recently, I've read many articles on Jihu and feel that I've learned enough to leave the mountain. Oh no, leave the mountain. Lioli. I want to be the best in everything I do. I'm #1 in gaming. My investment foresight definitely won't be any worse than that Warren Buffett in your world. Just leave your money to this empress to manage. Don't you think that it's pretty cool for a divine emperor to lower himself to be Chen Guang's butler? From what she said, it seemed that she was eyeing my money. How many articles did she read on Jihu? Financial manager? Damn it. Bring your sister's feelings. If it was a reliable god emperor, I would beg him to take care of it even if I had to kneel down. But I don't trust you from the bottom of my heart because of your character. Hey, don't be like this. You don't have to bother yourself with such trivial matters. Let me do it myself. Don't stand on ceremony with me. After all, you are my savior, and it is my duty to help you solve your problems. Don't say any more. I've already made up my mind. You just have to win the money back. I guarantee that I'll give you 10 times the amount in a year. If not, I'll change your money back. Recently, I've been playing a lot of games. Whenever the opponent queues up against me, I'll instantly quit. It's getting a little boring. I'm looking for something else to do. Don't you dare deprive me of my fun. Anyway, you can't stop me, right? After Liuli said this, she went silent again. No matter how much Chen Guang called out to her in his mind, it was of no use. Chen Guang threw away the cup in disappointment. He silently calculated that he should transfer 4 million to Wang Qing first to pay off his debt. If he won the money tonight, he would transfer it all to his dad's account. He would first help his dad pay off part of the court's judgment. As for the battle to protect the car in the next few days, if he thought about it carefully, it wouldn't be a big deal if he didn't participate. With a sense of loss, he took an afternoon nap on his bed. After that, Chen Guang gave his father a call. Since he decided to transfer the money tonight, it was better to give him a heads up before he fainted again. After chatting with Chen Guoli for a while, Chen Guang learned about the situation in Wujing City. After the donor arrived, with Tang Ying's help, she was quickly arranged into a hospital room. Now that a few days had passed, both Feng Rong and the donor's physical condition were under control. The time for the operation had been completely set, which was 9:00 in the morning 4 days later. In short, Dad, you don't have to worry about the money. Your son is no longer the same as before. Tonight, I will transfer a large sum of money over. When Mom is fully recovered, you can find a suitable time to pay off the money awarded by the court. It's not a good idea to keep owing it. Although there is something fishy about this case, we can't win. Even if I will find out the details of the case sooner or later, we should stop worrying about it now. Chen Guang said carefully, for fear of scaring Chen Guoli. If it were another time, Chen Guang would have to fork out a few million to pay off the debt that he didn't want to acknowledge. There was no way. But now, first, it was too easy and enjoyable to make money in the past few days. Second, there was the completely deceptive Emperor of the Azure, who was eyeing the large sum of money. Just like what she said, if this woman really wanted to do something, there was no way to prevent it. Based on the principle that it was better to fill the hole first than to throw away the money. After paying off the debt, at least there was a bubble. Sigh, Xiao Guang, don't say any more. I understand. It's been hard on you. Oh, right. How was the effect of the soup last time? Recently, I asked your uncle about an even more powerful prescription in his hometown. You're still young.
Bam.
Chen Guang decisively hung up the phone. Jiang Yage was too much of a scapegoat. He didn't know what kind of terrifying human-shaped juicer his dad would imagine a beautiful young celebrity to be. Now that he thought about it, he transferred 1.2 million yuan to him last time, and he came up with a vitality recovery soup. This time, he was going to transfer 4 million yuan to him. Could he come up with a vitality recovery soup that was 4 times more powerful? Would I still be able to live after eating it? Would it be too much of a supplement? Should I stick to rubbing it every day from tonight onwards and use up some of my vitality in advance? So conflicted, so painful, so flustered. Should I secretly change to a sock puppet and apologize under Jiang Ye's Weibo? He felt a little apologetic in his heart. This complicated and uneasy feeling lasted until that night, when Chen Guang sat in his car and prepared for the final round of the race. After 4 consecutive days of competition, those who were able to stand out from the 64 cars and become one of the top 8 were undoubtedly the best of the best in this year's race, whether it was the level of the driver or the performance of the car. Among them were the previous champion, Yuan, and the McLaren P1, which had an eye-catching performance in the first round, almost catching up to Chen Guang's record. In the second round, the Subaru Winged Leopard WRXT, who had watched from the sidelines against Chen Guang and He Tianzhao, also performed well. It successfully passed the first round and became one of the finalists. Other than Chen Guang, there was another GTR in the final round. This car was different from Chen Guang's. It was said that it had been shipped from Japan by sea a long time ago, and the entire car was made of pure black technology. Of course, the car participating in this race was not the ordinary version that could be bought on the market, but the real cutting-edge technology of the original manufacturer. In addition, the driver was from the same school as Ryoichi Takahashi and was considered Ryoichi Takahashi's nephew. The other 3 cars were BMW M4, Renault Alpine, and Corvette C7Z06. Among them, the driver of the BMW M4 was a driver who had just switched from professional rallying to participate in underground racing. The car was configured according to his years of racing experience, and he had invited several engineers from the rallying team to help modify and debug the car. Although his car was not expensive, his ability was not to be underestimated. The Renault Alpine was even more impressive. It was a top driver hired by this company to participate in this race to build momentum for their upcoming new concept car. As for the other Corvette C7Z06, it was equipped with a supercharged CR1 series engine and added a lot of violent modifications. Coupled with an ultra-lightweight body that was also expensive to build, the real combat power of this car far exceeded its price, and it became a real killer on the mountain roads. Looking at Chen Guang being pushed down to number 8 in the ranking, just like in the previous round, Lu Fei frowned. Yesterday's opponents had already targeted him. Today, at the final stage, if he won again, it would really be a battle to protect the car. He was afraid that the resistance he would face today would be even greater than yesterday. Once it was a battle to protect the car, the other car kings who participated in the race would have their own pride and dignity and would certainly not join forces to target him. With his skills that surpassed the limits of human beings, his race might actually become easier. So, today was his biggest challenge. Chapter 251. At this stage of the race, it was completely different from the previous 3 rounds. From the beginning, everyone's eyes were focused on Chen Guang. Who could stop him from dominating this racetrack would be the only suspense tonight. Wupon Junyao and Takahashi Ryo were surrounded by a few more people. Ferdinand, the king of the rising sun from London, Fallant, the son of sound from Detroit, Speed, the king of rainforest from Brazil, and Felix, the king of diamonds from Africa. This year's race was only halfway through, and 5 of the world's top 10 car kings had already arrived. Among them, Sonic Shack chose to retire from the world because of his old age and stayed in Detroit to manage his modification factory, but for the first time, he pushed his son, Farent, to the front stage. At least in the eyes of other acquaintances, although Farent was not as calm as Shack, his style and drive were better than his father's. Lu Fei looked at the car kings gathered together from afar, her heart filled with excitement. But she no longer looked up to these people. Instead, she was proud in her heart. The purpose of you coming here is to defeat Lu Fei's master, Chen Guang. This was basically the rhythm of Chen Guang and Lu Fei. When it had nothing to do with racing, Chen Guang's every move was telling Lu Fei that her brother was a loser, constantly refreshing his image in her heart. But once it was involved with racing, Chen Guang's pitiful and fragmented personal image could be restored in Lu Fei's heart in an instant. Moreover, it was constantly elevated by her to the level of a god that could only be looked up to but not approached. It was not only Lu Fei who was so concerned about the existence of these car kings. Even Mr. X on the commentary platform had similarly led the topic to these car kings. This year's racing race was destined to be extraordinary. Yesterday's Ayuan ultimately failed to reach the top 3 before reaching the finish line, but rather awkwardly fell to 4th place in his group. But this was not necessarily bad news. At least today, he was very happy to be assigned number 1, neatly lining up at the front of the starting line. After experiencing yesterday's fiasco, Ayuan had learned from the painful experience. Today, he had completely abandoned all the chaotic thoughts in his mind from the beginning. He just stared at the front with full concentration, his mind empty. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was, I have to be faster. Faster than the limit. They had to go all out and maintain the advantage they had at the beginning of the ranking until the last second. Even if he fell halfway, he would not easily admit defeat. Since he was ranked first from the very beginning due to his advantage in ranking, then he should not disappoint this ranking. He should run a good race to his heart's content. Regardless of the outcome, he would not have any regrets. Even if he might become the foil of the GTR's legend, he would not be a withered and dull leaf. At least, he would be a bright emerald leaf. There were many people who shared the same mentality as Ayuan. Before yesterday, there were still people who tried to compete with this mysterious GTR in terms of speed. However, after seeing the data of the GTR yesterday, anyone with a normal brain could clearly understand one thing. What they needed to face was an ultimate big boss that was even more of a king of cars than the king of cars. Will he be able to leave everyone in the dust today and restart the Xiangjiang racing car racing competition after 4 years? As the start of the competition approached, the same question appeared in everyone's mind, including the racing king. In Gokyo University, thousands of kilometers away, in Zhuo Jingxi's office, a large group of people were gathered in front of Zhuo Jingxi's computer. In the end, Sun Xiaoxuan couldn't hold himself back from whispering about Chen Guang's car racing incident. Although this matter wasn't completely spread throughout the class, Chen Guang's 3 grandsons, as well as the counselor, Zhuo Jingxi, all knew about it. No one knew where Lin Jingwei had found the channel, but he had actually used a very internal method to completely synchronize the live broadcast of Mr. X's commentary that had originally only appeared on the mid-mountain race track to Zhuo Jingxi's computer. At this time, the 3 grandsons of Lin Jingwei, Sun Xiaoxuan, Gao Ya, and Zhuo Jingxi were all gathered in front of the computer. Their eyes were wide open and their fists were tightly clenched as they stared at the matte GTR waiting quietly at the back of the traffic. Because Chen Guang was wearing the flexible V-shaped mask of the Secret Service, the organizing committee was not worried that it would ruin his idea of hiding his identity. They simply found an unmanned helicopter with a high-definition camera to fly around the GTR and capture every detail of Chen Guang's car and the people inside. If others saw Chen Guang's expression at this time, they might think he was mysterious and domineering, but Lin Jingwei and the others who were familiar with Chen Guang's personality knew that his state was completely different from the real him. I've never seen Brother Guang look like this. He looks like he's going to eat someone. Bai Fan hit the nail on the head. Sun Xiaoxuan clenched her fists tightly. She was extremely nervous. Why isn't he wearing a safety helmet? I've seen car racing on TV with safety helmets. Lin Jingwei shook his head. This is different. This is an unofficial underground racing competition. The people who participate in this kind of competition are all crazy. Although wearing a helmet can slightly increase the safety factor, it will affect the vision and reduce the overall performance of the driver. I really didn't expect Brother Guang to have such terrifying driving skills after racing for a year and a half. By Nyangzi, you're right. With his results so far, he is indeed going to eat someone. After saying this, Lin Jingwei, who knew a little about the inside story, explained the rules of the racing competition in detail to everyone. So, almost everyone is Chen Guang's enemy now? Zhuo Jingxi, the counselor, finally couldn't hold it in. At this moment, she was no longer a counselor. She was just a girl who was worried about Chen Guang's safety, just like everyone else. Lin Jingwei nodded. That's right. He's the enemy of the world. If he can keep winning, he will definitely walk on the altar and become a legend. That's crazy. Xiong was shocked. Lin Jingwei nodded. It's that crazy. I can't explain it clearly to you. I can only tell you that up until now, the dominance he has shown in this underground racing competition is more like a main character in a movie or anime. He's a monster. Other than earning tens of millions of yuan, he will also establish a godlike status in the industry. He's indeed Brother Guang. From the first day I met him, I knew he wasn't simple. Otherwise, who could make Lin Jingwei call him boss? Get lost. You make it sound like you're some big shot. Gaoya stomped hard on Lin Jingwei's foot and said angrily, You're getting cocky. Lin Jingwei howled in pain, but he looked like he was enjoying it. This guy was sincere about Gaoya. No wonder I think this guy looks so handsome with his mask on. He's so handsome. I'm a tiger by Mu Donjiang, and I'm almost mesmerized by him.
He's so mesmerizing.
On the other side, Xiong, I was so scared that he started speaking in northeastern dialect. He stared at the computer screen, his eyes shining. Everyone turned their heads to look at him. They were disgusted by the words that came out of this burly man's mouth. If the match hadn't finally started on the screen, the solemn atmosphere that everyone had gathered with great difficulty would have been blown away by him. As the originally still traffic began to move, Chen Guang's eyes narrowed. His murderous aura seemed to pass through the screen and hit everyone in the face. The current Chen Guang had become a stranger to those who were familiar with him. This was the first time the crowd had seen Chen Guang in a racing car. He was completely different from his usual self. After listening to Lin Jingwei's explanation, the crowd knew that this was the golden age of the global underground racing world and also Chen Guang's personal battlefield. He used his eyes to tell the crowd that this time, he was racing with the determination to succeed or die trying. He was like a peerless warrior who wanted to take the head of the enemy's general from among thousands of soldiers and horses. He would either become a god or fall to hell forever. Chapter 252. The race has begun. Yuan didn't disappoint. He pulled the power to the maximum in an instant. He didn't let down his first-place ranking. His start was smooth but fast. The McLaren P1 worth tens of millions has maximized the advantage of hybrid power, using the super strong current to pull the speed to the maximum in an instant. His start is shockingly fast. Today's protagonist, the invincible god of war who always wears a mask, was full of aggression from the start. He gave the BMW M4 in front of him a lot of pressure. This guy seems to have only shown his true form today. He's about to enter the first turn. Everyone pulled inwards one after another, preparing to slow down for the turn. The data analysis results are out. Today, the average speed of the 8 cars has surpassed the 3 cars in front. It's catching up to the speed of the Dark Knight Temptress and the Inferno God of War the day before yesterday. Mr. X was giving his commentary like a machine gun. The scene was so intense from the start that it was heart-wrenching. Sister Lu Fei, is Brother Racing God in a bad mood today? Jia suddenly turned his head and asked Lu Fei beside him. Lu Fei shook her head.
He's not in a bad mood.
He just doesn't want to lose. The organizing committee kept putting him last without saying anything. Maybe he's a little unhappy. He won't lose, right? I feel like his opponent is very strong too. Jia asked again. His heart wasn't very determined. Lu Fei shook her head, but her expression was unprecedentedly firm. He won't lose. When he's serious, he's invincible. The stronger his opponent, the stronger he will be. The him I know has no upper limit. At that moment, Mr. X suddenly screamed. Because when he was about to cut into the first turn, Chen Guang, who had been at the back since the start, pulled to the outside line. Turning speed of 160. 160. What the hell? If I don't crash, I'll eat sh*t live. Mr. X finally couldn't help but curse. Then he was slapped in the face. The Renault Alpine was overtaken. There was no way to fight back. Like a black meteor, Chen Guang chose to overtake on the outside line right from the start of the race under everyone's watchful eyes. Then, he would continue to overtake other cars along the right side of the sideline. He would exit the corner faster than the others and continue to press forward. He would immediately force the next Corvette, C7Z06. Everyone in the audience hoped for a slow-motion replay because they really could not understand what had just happened. They could not understand how someone could pass through that bend at 160 kilometers per hour. This was completely inconsistent with the common sense of physics in everyone's minds. Sister Lu Fei, I don't understand. I personally modified this car piece by piece, so I know better than anyone else how capable it is. But why is it like this? Jia looked confused. Lu Fei also shook his head. He recalled the psychological trauma Chen Guang had given everyone when he first used Wang Qing's GTR to reach 150 on Fengquan Mountain a long time ago. At that time, everyone felt the same way. They couldn't understand how he did it. Perhaps, up until now, that guy had never been serious about driving? It was a pity that Chen Guang's advance was too fast and too fierce. He did not give the data analysis team the slightest time or opportunity to prepare. In the blink of an eye, he was already behind the Corvette, like a ferocious beast that was about to devour someone. The skills of God were never easily understood by mortals. Knowing how much trauma his actions would cause to others, Chen Guang only laughed. In fact, he had another skill. In less than 5 seconds, he sharpened the tip of a pencil into a lifelike rose. That was much more difficult than a 160 kilometers per hour turn. You bunch of ignorant mortals. If I let you know that I once drove an Alto to 400 kilometers per hour on a similar track, would your hearts explode and you die? Just as Lu Fei had guessed, Chen Guang had never really been serious, even when he was running the Fengquan mountain track. Since today was about whether or not he could start the second round of the race, then he would really go crazy for once. An invisible momentum slowly rose from the madly sprinting matte GTR. Even through the huge screen, everyone seemed to be able to feel his murderous intent. Before this, he was a man who was close to God, but today he was going to become a real god. There were many people who could drive, but only 1 in 10,000 could race. It was not difficult to drive the car steadily and safely along the road to the destination. But to drive the car to the limit of one's psychology and physiology, to cross the longest route in the shortest time, and to be the first to cross the finish line in the fierce competition was 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than normal safe driving. The drivers who could compete with Chen Guang today were already the best of the best. Ordinary people would have to control the car's speed to less than 80 kilometers per hour, but they could cross the intense corners at 110 or even 115 kilometers per hour. Among them, the lowest level was still better than Wang Qing from Wujing City. But the difference between Chen Guang and them was complete. People of different realms had different limits. The limit of others was 115 kilometers per hour, which was enough to make them feel like their car was on the verge of completely losing control. But for Chen Guang, from the beginning, his limit was not at this level. What could limit him was not his personal limit, but the sudden change of the steering wheel with his right hand, as well as the stability of the car itself. During the high-speed sprint, if someone sat in the passenger seat of Chen Guang, they would find that the movements of his hands and feet were extremely fast. In less than a second, he would complete at least 10 operations: speed up, brake, turn, hand brake, foot brake, speed up again, drift with the accelerator, drift with the handbrake. Other drivers could occasionally do it once or twice, but absolutely no one could do it like him. During the whole process of the sprint, from beginning to end, he could complete such intense, continuous control without any flaws. Even with the eyes of the top professional drivers, they could only come to this conclusion: this guy is crazy. Why did Zhong Bai come to such a conclusion when he sat in Chen Guang's car? He didn't understand. Was it because Zhong Bai was too noob? Of course not. It was because Chen Guang's operating frequency was too fast, too violent. Zhong Bai could see it with his naked eyes, but he couldn't see it clearly. He could see it clearly, but he couldn't understand it. His brain couldn't analyze the meaning of Chen Guang's operation. He knew the principle of drifting, but He couldn't understand Qinguang's technique at all. Others could only go 110 kilometers per hour at most, so how could he go 160 kilometers per hour? When he entered the corner, he was crazily controlling the brake, the accelerator, and the handbrake. His hand was shaking like a Parkinson's disease patient, holding the steering wheel. What was his intention? This is different from what I learned from the books, or the drifting that I learned on my own. The same thought appeared in the mind of the driver of the Corvette in front of Qinguang. To put it simply, it could be summed up in 3 words: King dog. When a junior high school student was faced with a math problem given by a university professor, his performance was no better than that of a primary school student. The only difference between him and Zhong Bai was that Zhong Bai was stunned in the front passenger seat of Qinguang's car, while the driver of the Corvette was stunned in his own car. Without a trace of defense, he was easily overtaken. Qinguang's next target, which could be said to be his same kind, another GTR. Takahashi Ryuichi knew his nephew's ability very well. He just shook his head helplessly. Invincible. This person is invincible. Keisuke can't stop him at all. Before his voice died away, this GTR, which was also painted with flames because of its worship of Takahashi Ryuichi, became a thing of the past. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.